Welcome back, everyone. You're tuned in to CrumbleBob, which means it's time for a fresh batch of crazy and absurd stories from Reddit. Today, we're diving into people's relationships, and honestly, some of them really need to take a hard look at their lives. But for us, it's time to begin. I, 26M, have been together with my girlfriend, Marilyn, 24F, for roughly a year and a half. We've shared a home for the last 6 months. Generally, things have been good, but lately something has been troubling me, and I'm uncertain if I'm being rational or simply paranoid. Marilyn works as a junior analyst at a consulting firm. Roughly 2 months back, she began bringing up this colleague named Evan, who seemingly attended the same graduate program as her, only a few years prior. Per Marilyn, Evan has been very helpful in clarifying some of the more complex client work, and has volunteered to help her prepare for an upcoming certification exam that might result in a promotion. Initially, I considered this wonderful. Marilyn has been putting in a lot of effort and merits that promotion. The issue is that these study sessions invariably take place at Evan's apartment, typically commence around 7 or 8 p.m., and Marilyn doesn't return home until 1 to 3 a.m. When I've inquired why they couldn't study at our home, or at the office, Marilyn states Evan's apartment is more practical, as he possesses all the reference materials there, and it's calmer than the office. Here's what has been troubling me. 1. Marilyn switches off her phone or doesn't respond when I text during these sessions. She states it's because they're intensely focused, yet she's typically quite good about quick replies, usually. 2. When she returns home, she frequently smells of alcohol. When I've inquired about it, she states Evan occasionally provides her a glass of wine to aid her relaxation while studying. However, she hasn't typically been much of a drinker before. 3. These sessions occur 2-3 times weekly and have continued for approximately 6 weeks now. 4. The previous week I proposed bringing them both dinner given that they were studying so late, and Marilyn became oddly defensive and stated it would be a distraction. 5. When I've attempted to raise my discomfort with the circumstance, Marilyn charges me with a lack of trust and declares I'm insecure. What truly troubles me is that Marilyn has numerous other colleagues she could study with, among them several women in her department who are likewise getting ready for the same certification. When I brought this up, she stated Evan is the sole individual who has already cleared the exam and comprehends the material sufficiently to assist. Yesterday evening marked the breaking point. Marilyn departed for a study session at 7 p.m. I messaged her at 10 p.m., inquiring about her return time. No reply. Called at 11:30 p.m., going directly to voicemail. She eventually arrived home at 2:45 a.m., evidently having consumed multiple beverages, and when I conveyed my concern, she informed me I was acting controlling and possessive. This morning, I informed her that I'm uneasy with these late-night study sessions at Evan's apartment and inquired if we could discover an alternative setup. Marilyn erupted at me, claiming I don't trust her, that Evan is simply assisting her career, and that I'm undermining her success because I'm insecure. To be clear, I'm not attempting to dictate whom Marilyn spends time with or hinder her career progression. However, returning home after 2 a.m., reeking of alcohol from frequent study sessions with a male colleague while being inaccessible by phone appears abnormal to me. I believe I'm not requesting excessive by desiring improved communication or a different study setup. Marilyn is presently giving me the silent treatment and messaged her sister that I'm being unhealthy and controlling. Her sister labeled me an asshole and stated I must trust Marilyn or end our relationship with her. So, am I the asshole for requesting my girlfriend cease these late evening study sessions at her colleague's apartment? Am I being irrational, or are my worries legitimate? Appreciate all the feedback thus far. Some individuals have requested further specifics. Marilyn and I typically share a positive relationship, and this is the initial significant problem we've encountered. I lack a background of jealousy or control. The certification exam remains 3 months distant. Marilyn has not presented me to Evan despite discussing him perpetually. When I proposed I wished to meet him, Marilyn stated it would be uncomfortable to blend professional and personal lives. Comment 1. NTA. Buddy, I've been wed for 12 years, and I can assure you that study sessions lasting until 2 a.m. with wine included are not genuine study sessions. Her refusal to answer her phone and her defensiveness when you pose sensible questions is a significant warning sign. You aren't acting controlling by setting limits regarding your girlfriend, spending private late-night hours with another guy while intoxicated and out of reach. OP's response: many thanks for this. I've been doubting myself because Marilyn is typically quite sensible, and her response was so intense. It's reassuring to hear that my worries aren't entirely unfounded. Comment 2. Listen to your intuition, pal. I overlooked similar warning signs early in my initial marriage and came to regret it. At the very least, she ought to be prepared to compromise on the venue or schedule if she genuinely values your sentiments. Comment 3. My profession is consulting. There's positively no justification for these study sessions to occur at his apartment until 2 a.m. Most certification preparation can be completed during regular business hours, and if they're genuinely studying, they ought to be sober and concentrated. The regular involvement of alcohol reveals all you need to understand. Furthermore, any respectable coworker assisting someone with their studies would be amenable to including the partner or convening in impartial venues. OP's response: that's truly useful background. Marilyn presented it as though this was standard practice in your field, but it never struck me as proper. Comment 4. NTA. The phone being powered off is the most significant warning sign here. What if an emergency arose? What if something occurred to you? There's no study session significant enough to be entirely out of contact for over 6 hours continuously. OP's response: this is precisely what I attempted to convey to her. What if her parents had to contact her, or something happened to me? She simply called me dramatic. Comment 5. I'm a woman who is employed in consulting and has prepared for comparable certifications. I've never found it necessary to study at a male colleague's apartment until 2 a.m. with alcohol involved. There are study groups, online resources, review courses, and numerous other alternatives. She's exercising discretion, not adhering to required protocols. OP's response: I appreciate this viewpoint. It's reassuring to hear from an individual who genuinely works in the sector and has completed this procedure. Comment 6. Have you met Evan? Has Marilyn volunteered to introduce you? Does she discuss these study sessions frankly, or does she appear evasive? OP's response: I have not yet met Evan. When I proposed it, Marilyn said it would be uncomfortable to blend professional and private lives. She mentions him frequently, but becomes peculiar if I inquire about specific details regarding what they studied or what they discussed. Typically, she just states it's work-related and shifts the conversation. Comment 7. Uda, you're being uncertain and domineering. Marilyn is an adult who is capable of making her own choices about her career and her friendships. If you don't trust her, you ought not to be with her. This post smacks of harmful masculinity. OP's response: I politely disagree. I generally do trust Marilyn, which is why this circumstance is so perplexing for me. I'm not attempting to manage her career or her relationships, but I believe it's fair to establish limits regarding private, late evening scenarios that include alcohol. After reviewing your feedback, I chose to attempt a calm, sincere discussion with Marilyn. I waited until she was in a pleasant mood yesterday evening and addressed it as delicately as I could. Marilyn initially appeared open to discussion. I asked her to assist me in comprehending why these study sessions specifically had to occur at Evan's apartment, and why they couldn't convene during regular hours or in public venues. Her rationale was essentially identical to her previous one. Evan possesses all the resources, his apartment is tranquil, and they can concentrate more effectively in the evening. When I inquired about the alcohol, she acknowledged that they typically share a bottle of wine during their sessions, but maintained it aids her relaxation and better retention of information. I informed her this troubled me because it appeared more social than scholarly, and she once again became defensive, asserting I was overthinking it. The discussion genuinely deteriorated when I questioned if I might meet Evan. Marilyn's reply was prompt and resolute. She stated it would be improper and unsuitable to introduce her boyfriend to a professional associate. When I mentioned she'd introduce me to other co-workers at company events, she said Evan was different because they have a professional mentoring relationship that shouldn't be complicated by personal relationships. I attempted to remain calm and asked if there was any compromise we could reach, perhaps studying at our place sometimes, or having me pick her up so she wouldn't have to drive after drinking. Marilyn said I was being possessive and trying to control her career advancement. She accused me of not wanting her to succeed and said that my insecurity would hold her back professionally. The conversation concluded with Marilyn saying that if I couldn't trust her, perhaps we shouldn't be together. She said Evan is merely a friend who's helping her career and that she won't sacrifice her professional growth for my jealousy issues. Here's where it becomes interesting, though. This morning, Marilyn departed early for work, and I happened to run into her friend Sylvia close to our apartment. Sylvia and Marilyn have been good friends since college, and she also works at the same consulting firm, in a different department. Sylvia asked how I was doing and mentioned that she'd heard Marilyn and I were having some relationship issues. I didn't want to get into details, but Sylvia brought up the certification exam and said she'd been thinking about studying for it too. She asked if I thought Marilyn would be willing to include her in the study group with Evan. I felt confused and asked what she intended. Sylvia replied, "You know, the study sessions they've been holding. I've been hoping to join, but wasn't certain if they'd want an additional person." I understood Sylvia was unaware these sessions were taking place at Evan's apartment, or that they involved just the two of them. When I brought this up, Sylvia appeared genuinely astonished. She said she'd presumed it was an individual thing, and that's why she hadn't received an invitation. This resulted in a more extended conversation, where I discovered some troubling details. 1. Sylvia and 2 other female colleagues are also pursuing the same certification. None of them have received an invitation to study with Evan, despite him purportedly being the expert. 3. Sylvia had actually inquired with Marilyn a few weeks ago if she wanted to establish a study group, and Marilyn refused, stating she had it handled for. According to Sylvia, there are numerous senior colleagues who have attained this certification and would be ready to assist, not merely Evan. Sylvia appeared genuinely worried when I clarified the situation. She mentioned it was peculiar that Marilyn wouldn't want to study with other people if she was truly concentrated on passing the exam, since group study is typically more effective. After conversing with Sylvia, I'm even more persuaded that something improper is occurring. If these were truly merely study sessions, why wouldn't Marilyn involve her other colleagues who are getting ready for the same exam? When Marilyn returned home tonight, I chose to question her about it. I brought up that I'd encountered Sylvia and found out that she and others were likewise preparing for the certification. I proposed that perhaps Marilyn might invite them to join her sessions with Evan. Marilyn's reaction was instant and furious. She said I had no business discussing our relationship problems with her friends and that I was trying to undermine her study setup. When I indicated that group study could actually prove more beneficial, she said Evan's instructional approach suits her particularly well, and that additional individuals would cause a diversion. I questioned her straightforwardly if this is truly just about studying. Why can't Sylvia or the others join sometimes? Marilyn said I was cross-examining her and that she didn't have to account for her study techniques to me. The discussion concluded with Marilyn stating she's heading to Evans tomorrow evening as scheduled, and that if I'm unable to cope, I should decide what I intend to do concerning it. She's currently residing in the guest room and refuses to communicate with me. I feel like I'm losing my mind here. Everything Marilyn says logically holds up, but her conduct and responses don't align with someone merely innocently studying with a colleague. The circumstance that she won't involve other people who are preparing for the same exam, refuses to let me meet Evan, and becomes enraged whenever I pose inquiries, leads me to believe something different is happening. I'm beginning to contemplate some of the suggestions from my original post about showing up at Evan's apartment, but I don't wish to be the kind of person who distrusts his girlfriend. At the same time, I feel as though I'm being gaslighted. What would you do in this circumstance? Sylvia appeared in the comments section. Sylvia, hello, this is Sylvia. I am a lurker and discovered this post, and I wish to clarify a few points. Everything Op mentioned about our discussion is precise. I am truly worried about Marilyn's conduct, because it's not typical in our profession. A number of us have been perplexed as to why she wouldn't desire study partners when we're all striving toward the identical objective. The fact that she's maintaining this so distinct from her other friendships is a significant warning sign. Op, you are not losing your mind. Op responded, "Holy cow, Sylvia, I can't believe you discovered this and chose to comment. Thank you for supporting me. I've been feeling as though I'm going crazy." Comment 2. Man, simply head to Evan's apartment the next time she's present. You'll obtain your answer very swiftly. If they are truly studying, they'll be seated at a table with books and notes. If they are not, well, then you will be aware. Op responded, "I've been contemplating this, but I'm concerned about overstepping a boundary. What if I'm mistaken, and I conclude, Up appearing like a deranged boyfriend?" Comment 3. The fact that her co-worker Sylvia validated your suspicions alters everything. This is no longer about you being insecure. You possess objective proof that Marilyn's conduct is uncommon and clandestine. Rely on your intuition, Op responded. That's precisely my sentiment. Sylvia's viewpoint truly confirmed that this isn't typical workplace conduct. Comment 4. The fact that she's occupying the guest room and subjecting you to the silent treatment for posing sensible inquiries reveals everything. Individuals who are being truthful don't respond with such defensiveness to legitimate questions from their partners. Op responded, "You're correct. If I were in her situation and my worries were truly baseless, I would wish to comfort her, not penalize her for inquiring." Update 2. This will likely be my concluding update, and it's not the one I had hoped to compose. Following the discussion with Sylvia and Marilyn's progressively defensive conduct, I determined I needed to ascertain the truth regardless. I'm aware some of you counseled me to simply appear at Evan's apartment, and while a part of me feared appearing like a paranoid boyfriend, I recognized I was already existing in a relationship devoid of trust or communication. Last night, Marilyn departed for another study session at 7 p.m., as was customary. She gave me a farewell kiss, as usual, but appeared somewhat strained. I waited approximately an hour, then resolved to drive over to Evan's apartment complex, with the pretext that I was bringing them coffee and snacks, given how diligently they were working. I was aware of Evan's address because Marilyn had previously brought up the building, and I managed to locate his unit number by consulting the building directory. Upon reaching his door at approximately 8:30 p.m., I could discern music playing within, yet not the type of concentrated quiet you would anticipate from individuals studying. I tapped on the door and waited. It took roughly 3 minutes for someone to respond, which appeared odd if they were merely seated at a table studying. When Evan eventually opened the door, he was visibly agitated. He had on a t-shirt and sweatpants, and his hair was disheveled. He certainly wasn't anticipating my presence. "Oh, hello," he uttered. "You must be Marilyn's boyfriend. Goodness, we're simply concluding for the evening." I could glimpse over his shoulder into the dwelling. No books were visible, no documents, no study resources whatsoever. Merely an uncorked bottle of wine on the coffee table, and Netflix paused on the television displaying a romantic comedy. "May I enter for a moment?" Evan appeared terrified. "Actually, this isn't a particularly convenient moment. Marilyn's in the restroom, and we're about to finish up regardless." That's when I detected Marilyn's voice from further inside the apartment, calling Evan. "Who is it?" in a tone that most certainly didn't sound like someone who was simply studying. I moved past Evan into the dwelling. The apartment was compact, so it only required a few moments to perceive what was truly occurring. Marilyn appeared from what was evidently Evan's bedroom, clad solely in Evan's button-down shirt and clearly nothing additional. Her hair was unkempt, and she wore that post-intimacy appearance that I recognized intimately from our own relationship. The three of us simply stood there for a moment in utter silence. Marilyn's expression shifted from confused to horrified as she grasped what had just occurred. "This isn't what it looks like," she began to say, but truly, what else could it look like? I took out my phone and began recording. "So this is studying?" I asked. "Marilyn, can you explain to me how this constitutes certification exam prep? Don't you dare record this." Marilyn shrieked, but she was too distant to stop me, and honestly, I no longer cared about her comfort at that point. Evan attempted to step in front of my phone. "Dude, come on, don't be that guy." "Don't be that guy?" I laughed. "I'm not the guy fucking my girlfriend while pretending it's a study session." I captured about 30 seconds of video before Marilyn managed to snatch a throw blanket from the couch to cover herself. The video distinctly shows her in Evan's shirt, emerging from his bedroom, in an apartment with no study materials, and clear indications of them having been intimate. "Get out," Marilyn was yelling. "Get out right now. You have no right to be here." "I have no right?" I asked. "I'm bringing coffee to my girlfriend's study session, and I find her half naked in another man's bedroom." "But I have no right to be upset?" Evan, to his credit, appeared truly uneasy with the situation. "Look, man, I'm sorry. This escalated. It wasn't meant to happen like this." "Shut up, Evan," Marilyn snapped at him. I gazed at Marilyn, who was gripping the blanket around herself and scowling at me as if I were the one who had acted improperly. "How long?" I inquired. "It's irrelevant," Marilyn stated. "You're not meant to be here. You can't simply appear at people's apartments without an invitation." "How damn long, Marilyn?" Evan replied softly. "Approximately a month. We need to speak," Marilyn stated. "But not here. Return home and we'll discuss this like adults." "No," I stated. "We're finished talking. We're finished. Full stop. You can retrieve your belongings tomorrow when I'm at work." I departed the apartment with Marilyn yelling after me that I was making a grave error and that I was destroying everything over nothing. When I arrived home, I was genuinely in shock. I had hoped I was mistaken, that I'd appear and find them actually studying, and that I'd ultimately look like an idiot, but at least I'd still have a relationship. I sat in my car in our driveway for approximately 20 minutes, simply trying to process what had occurred. Then I began to get angry. That's when I made a choice that I'm not completely proud of, but I'm not entirely regretful about either. Marilyn hails from a very religious family. Her parents are profoundly Catholic, and her 3 siblings are all deeply involved in their church. They're good people, but they hold very traditional values regarding relationships and marriage. Marilyn has consistently been the good girl of the family, and her parents absolutely cherish her. I transmitted the video to her parents and all 3 of her siblings. I attached a message clarifying that I'd found out Marilyn had been deceiving me for months regarding studying with a coworker, and that upon checking on her, I discovered them together in his bedroom. I stated I was heartbroken and let down, and that I believed they ought to know the relationship they'd supported was built on falsehoods. Within an hour, my phone was ringing incessantly. Initially, Marilyn's mother telephoned me in tears, inquiring if the video was genuine. Next, her father called, enraged, insisting on knowing what sort of man I was for publicly shaming his daughter. Then Marilyn's siblings began calling, ultimately publicly shaming his daughter. Then Marilyn's siblings commenced calling. Finally, Marilyn telephoned me, utterly hysterical. "How could you do this to me?" she shrieked. "You've destroyed my bond with my family. My parents are heartbroken. My father is discussing disowning me financially." "You destroyed your bond with your family when you chose to cheat," I stated. "I merely ensured they knew the truth." "This is retaliation. This is harsh and malicious, and you're attempting to ruin my life. Marilyn, you ruined our life when you began sleeping with Evan a month ago. You ruined it when you lied directly to me every day for weeks. You ruined it when you made me believe I was irrational for having valid worries about my girlfriend's conduct. I made an error. People make errors. This doesn't imply our entire relationship should conclude. A mistake is forgetting to take out the trash, or accidentally scheduling 2 dinner plans. Having an affair for a month isn't a mistake, it's a decision. Marilyn attempted to persuade me to delete the video, as if that were feasible. She claimed she'd end things with Evan and we could attend counseling. She vowed she'd do anything to rectify it. But here's the reality. I understood that even if she hadn't cheated, our relationship was already finished. This morning, Marilyn dropped by while I was at work to collect her belongings. My neighbor messaged me that she'd arrived with Evan, the Nerve, and 2 other friends, and that they'd quickly filled a U-Haul. She left her key on the kitchen counter, along with a note that read, "I hope you're happy. You've ruined my family relationships and mortified me in the most terrible way. What you did was worse than anything I did. I hope it was worth it." Honestly, it was worth it. Sylvia messaged me this morning to say she was proud of me for asserting myself, and that several individuals at Marilyn's workplace had learned about what transpired. Apparently, Evan is married, which I wasn't aware of, but she somehow discovered the affair. So there were more repercussions than just what I intended. But frankly, if you're going to have an affair, you cannot dictate how widely the fallout spreads. Thanks to everyone who commented on my prior posts. Your encouragement and viewpoints helped me realize that I wasn't being irrational, and granted me the bravery to trust my intuition. Edit. Many individuals are inquiring about Evan being married. I learned this through Sylvia after everything unfolded. Evidently, it's not broadly known at their office that he's married because his wife resides in a different city for work. But some people were aware. His wife reached out to Marilyn's company after she discovered, which is how it transformed into workplace gossip. I don't feel sorry for him. If you're going to cheat on your wife, you cannot be surprised when it shatters your life. Edit 2. Some individuals are asserting I was incorrect to involve Marilyn's family. I grasp that viewpoint, but I wish to be clear about something. Marilyn's parents have been financially backing her since she commenced her job, because the entry-level consulting salary in our city isn't sufficient to live on. They've been covering a portion of her rent, her car payment, and her student loans. They had a right to know that their virtuous daughter was having an affair, particularly since they've been so invested in her life and our relationship. They've hosted me for dinner dozens of times and treated me as family. I felt they merited knowing the truth about what kind of person they were supporting. Comment 1. Holy shit, OP. I've been tracking this saga from the start, and while I wasn't anticipating the family nuclear option, I cannot say I fault you. The sheer nerve of Marilyn screaming at you for embarrassing her when you caught her literally naked in another man's bedroom is astonishing. NTA for any of this. I know the family matter was controversial, but after being gaslit for weeks, I felt I needed people to know the truth about what truly happened. Sylvia, here again. The fallout at work has been significant. Evan is in serious trouble with HR. Given he's married and was having an affair with a subordinate, he is technically Marilyn's senior. Marilyn has requested a transfer to a different team. The entire situation has been a mess. Sylvia, can you confirm if Evan was genuinely Marilyn's mentor, or if that was also part of the lie? Sylvia, he's not involved in certification prep at all. He doesn't even possess the certification Marilyn was reportedly studying for. The entire expert mentor thing was complete nonsense. Thanks everyone for following this journey and for all your support. I wanted to give one final update since a lot of people have been asking how I'm doing. Thanks everyone for following this journey and for all your support. I wanted to give one final update since a lot of people have been asking how I'm doing. It's been a week since everything exploded. And truthfully, I feel better than I have in months. The perpetual anxiety and self-doubt have vanished. I'm sleeping more soundly. I'm no longer treading carefully. I learned via Sylvia that Marilyn is residing with her older sister temporarily, and that matters with her parents remain unstable. Her dad reportedly told her she needs to examine her moral compass before they'll resume normal contact. I don't take pleasure in her family drama, but I also don't regret my actions. Evan was dismissed yesterday. Evidently, the mix of the affair, the misrepresentation concerning the certification expertise, and the fact that he was officially in a supervisory role above Marilyn rendered it a simple decision for HR. His wife is proceeding with the divorce. Thanks again to everyone who helped me trust my instincts. You likely spared me months or years of being in a relationship built on lies. I'm going to take a break from Reddit for a while and focus on moving forward, but I'll update everyone in a few months with how things are going. Peace out and trust your gut. Get ready, because the next story is even worse. My fiancé, Nate, 27M, and I, 26F, have been a couple for nearly 3 years. He proposed to me roughly 6 months ago, and soon after we discovered I was pregnant. We're planning our wedding for next spring. Nate has a twin sister, 27F, who we will call Kayla. Nate and I revealed our engagement and my pregnancy simultaneously. We put up a sweet little Facebook post featuring a few engagement photos and an ultrasound picture, saying something like the Smith family would soon welcome 2 new members. Kayla commented almost right away that we'd have to wait until next year to actually get married, because she looks best in autumn colors, and as my maid of honor, she'd get a say in picking bridesmaids' dresses. I literally gazed at my phone screen, wondering if I'd misread something. I showed Nate the comment and asked him why she believed she would be my maid of honor. He had no idea. So I messaged her, and this is how that conversation unfolded. Hey Kayla, I noticed you saw our Facebook announcement. Thanks for being ready to step up for me, but we haven't started sorting out wedding logistics yet, and I haven't chosen my bridesmaids, let alone my maid of honor. Once we've got more wedding details sorted, we'll let you know. Kayla, well, you don't need to pick a maid of honor anymore. I'm your maid of honor. I don't understand. I never asked you to be. Kayla, you don't need to ask. That's what makes me such a good sister. I'm sorry. You are not my maid of honor. Kayla, we'll see about that. I showed these messages to Nate, who mentioned he would handle it. I have no clue about the depth of their discussion, but Kayla never mentioned being my maid of honor again. She simply displayed her unpleasant behavior in other forms. Currently, Nate and I have already reserved the venues, caterer, florals, decorations, and the DJ. A few months back, I invited both my mother and Nate's mother, as well as my sister Sam, whom I requested to be my maid of honor, to go dress shopping. Kayla learned about it from her mother and invited herself to come along. We began by searching for a dress for Sam. I envisioned my bridesmaids in a lovely pastel yellow, but Sam's would be more golden. Kayla wouldn't stop talking about how yellow was such an unattractive color and that I ought to choose pink or blue instead. She even took a stack of pink and blue dresses to try on herself. I did my utmost to disregard her while her mother indulged her strange notions. Sam and my mother consistently remarked that it was my wedding, and if Kayla wasn't going to be useful, she should simply depart. Regrettably, she didn't, and I am too considerate to eject her in front of my mill, with whom I already have a difficult relationship. Our mothers managed to shop for their dresses with minimal obstruction from Kayla, but the moment I began trying items on, she had numerous opinions to share. She would remark that specific styles wouldn't suit me once I had a baby bod, and even suggested I consider not wearing white, given I'm clearly not a virgin. I reminded her she wasn't a virgin when she got married either, yet she still wore a charming white sundress to the courthouse. She muttered that wasn't the same, but I was already halfway back to the changing room. I still don't know what transpired while I was inside, but when I emerged, Kayla and Mill had departed, and Sam wore a smug smile. I never shared any wedding specifics with Kayla if I could avoid it, but I've overheard Nate discussing some of our arrangements with her. He informed her we were planning a buffet-style meal because our families have many dietary restrictions, and it was the most economical way to cater to everyone, literally a difference of several $1,000s. She then told him he deserved someone who wouldn't be stingy with his wedding, despite the buffet being his own suggestion. He recounted our venue selections. He chose the reception venue, and I chose the ceremony venue, which is the very place my parents wed. My father passed away, and since he can't walk me down the aisle, I always wished to marry in the same spot where he married my mom, to somehow feel his presence with us. She informed Nate that my venue selection was tacky, and that people would ridicule us. When he mentioned wanting a DJ, she commented that she knew I wasn't classy enough to desire a live band. Every single time she made remarks like these, Nate would tell her they were his ideas, but he wouldn't confront her about how she spoke of me, which I do find a bit hurtful. I've expressed this to him, and he said he would try to be better about calling her out, but she's just always been this way. I told him that's no justification for her to be disrespectful and meddle in affairs that don't concern her. He reluctantly agreed. On Friday, I received an email from our ceremony venue, confirming our cancellation and inquiring if we needed to reschedule. Shortly after that, I got a voicemail from our caterer explaining that my new wedding planner had just called, but the call had dropped, and they wondered if I could provide her phone number so they could complete reviewing changes to the menu. I immediately emailed the venue back, stating that no, we are not canceling or rescheduling, and to please retain our original date. I called the caterer, who explained that a woman had called, claiming to be my new wedding planner. She had stated that I wished to make some contract adjustments, specifically changing from a buffet style to plated meals. I informed him that this was incorrect. I do not have a wedding planner, and to please not make any alterations unless contacted directly by me or Nate using the contact information we have on file. The caterer also suggested placing a password on file. He mentioned he wouldn't implement any changes unless the person requesting them knew the password. I contacted both venues and all our other vendors to establish similar safeguards. They all expressed their empathy for my situation. When Nate returned home from work, I confronted him about it. I told him someone attempted to cancel my venue and alter our catering. I asserted that the only person it could be was Kayla. He tried to deny it, claiming she wouldn't do such a thing, but I reminded him of how she's undermined and insulted me throughout every stage of this engagement. I told him I wanted her uninvited. I refused to give someone who has already caused so much stress for this wedding the chance to do something like show up in white. He argued with me on this, but I essentially told him I felt disrespected by his allowance of Kayla's treatment toward me. I am his partner and the mother of his child. My feelings and comfort should take precedence over his sister's childish behavior. We met with her for lunch earlier today, and once dessert arrived, he asked her if she was trying to modify our wedding plans. She said, and I quote, "Well, yeah, it's the maid of honor's job to ensure the bride is making the right decisions." Before Nate could utter a word, I informed her she was not my maid of honor, and even if she were, that wouldn't grant her the power to undermine our choices and alter the wedding plans and budget without our knowledge. She claimed she didn't understand the fuss, as her grandmother had offered us a rather substantial sum as a gift to help cover wedding costs. I reiterated that the wedding budget was none of her concern. She attempted to argue, but I simply interrupted her. I told her that her conduct concerning our wedding up to this point had been entirely disrespectful and offensive. I informed her that attempting to cancel my venue had gone too far, and she was no longer invited to the wedding. She appeared utterly stunned by this. She glanced at Nate, expecting him to come to her defense, and he did. He looked at me and suggested, "Why don't we grant her one more opportunity?" I asked if he was serious. He replied no. He said Kayla was simply acting in what she believed was our best interest, and now that we'd communicated that it wasn't acceptable, we should allow her a chance to amend her conduct. I didn't even reply. I simply rose and departed. I got into my car and drove home, musing that if he wished to side with his sister, then he could depend on her for a ride home. I disregarded his attempts to contact me. Once home, I packed a small bag and headed to Sam's place. I recounted everything to her, and she assured me I could remain for as long as necessary. But now she's at work for the night, and that's where I am currently, attempting to process what just occurred, trying to figure out when I became second place in Nate's life, trying to figure out if there's any way to mend what he just broke in me. He keeps going back and forth between asking where I am, saying he didn't think this was such a big deal, and apologizing and asking me to come home and talk. I don't feel ready to talk to him just yet. I'm still too upset, and I feel like I'll do or say something I'll regret, like calling off the wedding altogether. I just told all my vendors that we aren't canceling the wedding, but right now I kind of want to. I don't know if it's my hormones making me feel crazy or if I'm valid and how hurt I'm feeling. I just don't know what to do or what to think. So, Ida for not wanting to give her a second chance? Or is my fiancé right that she deserves a chance to prove herself before she's uninvited from the wedding altogether? First of all, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who read my original post and offered their judgments and advice. Writing this out really helped me process what I was feeling, and hearing that I wasn't overreacting or just being hormonal from people who are removed from the situation was very comforting. I read every single comment, and there is no way to express how much all the kind words meant to me. There were lots and lots of comments asking for an update, but I wanted to wait until after I had talked to Nate. I spent last night at Sam's house and mostly ignored Nate's texts and calls. Kayla also texted me once saying not to let my hormones make me irrational. I simply blocked her, but someone suggested I unblock her and just silence her notifications. So if she escalates, I might be able to use it legally for my custody case. I did unblock her earlier today, and I'm glad I did. But we'll reach that point. I replied to Nate at one stage last night, telling him I was safe and at Sam's house, and that I would be home tomorrow, today, after work to talk about everything. I reiterated that I was feeling really hurt about not being heard or supported by him, and that I needed time to decide what I wanted to do. He asked what I implied by that, if I meant canceling the wedding altogether. I told him that is precisely what I was considering. His reply, "Don't let your hormones make you do something irrational. We'll talk tomorrow." Anyone else want to guess where he got that line? That nearly sealed my decision for me. I didn't reply, not even after he texted me, "Good night, I love you." Instead, before going to bed that night, I sent him a link to my post and told him to go through it before we talk. Someone said he likely sent it to Kayla as well. If she did read it, she hasn't left a comment. And if she texted me about it, it was while she was blocked. This morning I called into work and had breakfast with Sam. She provided me with the contact for a family lawyer that her friend used for his custody case. I spoke to the assistant, laid out my situation, and luckily, she had an opening after lunch for an initial consultation. So I took a shower and mostly just kept reading through the comments on my post until it was time to talk to her. I told the lawyer exactly why I'm leaving Nate and how I am terrified over how his sister would influence him with our baby. I don't trust him to not be swayed by Kayla and to have our baby's best interest at heart, so I want to contend for sole custody and supervised visitation. I told her that, if possible, I want to fight for sole custody and supervised visitation. I told her that, if possible, I want to include a provision that restricts Kayla from having any contact with my child. I'm already mentally readying myself to contend with Nate in court, because I know he will not consent to any of this. My lawyer told me that while my concerns are valid, it may be difficult to persuade a judge to place a contact restriction in the custody order, solely based on family drama. She counseled me to document everything Kayla has done and anything going forward, so we can submit it to the judge if and when we end up in court. She gave me a list of matters to consider, like if I want Nate to receive any custody whatsoever, or just visitation, how I want to manage aspects like medical care or schooling for my child, if I want to implement communication restrictions, like only talking over text. Many things I never would have imagined and never thought I would need to consider. We were meant to do all of this together. She advised me to take a few days to collect my thoughts and determine what I want. I arranged an in-person meeting for this Friday to review everything. Hopefully I'll have my thoughts clear by then, but if anyone has any counsel regarding what to include in these custody papers, I'm eager to hear it. Following the phone call with my lawyer, I checked some additional comments and then took a much-needed nap. When I awoke, I had a text from Nate inquiring what time I would finish work, so he could have dinner prepared for me when I arrived home. I informed him I would be there around 5, but if Kayla is present, I will turn around and depart without a word. I then inquired if he had read the post I sent him. He said he had, but that he would rather talk to me than read me, bash him and his sister on the internet with a bunch of strangers. Don't worry, I informed Kayla she isn't welcome. This infuriated me beyond measure. Evidently, he either didn't read the post or still doesn't grasp how truly in the wrong they are. Regardless, I lost all drive to try and discuss things to resolve them. I'm simply finished. I texted him not to bother with dinner. All I will be doing is collecting a few more items and leaving my lawyer's contact information. There's nothing further for us to discuss. He asked what I meant, what lawyer, and said he's been waiting to talk about this. All I said was fine. Sam wished me good luck before I left and reassured me I was welcome back once we were finished talking. I told her I certainly would return and thanked her for everything so far. When I got home, Nate had dinner ready, just as he said. I disregarded him and simply proceeded directly to our room to pack up some more of my clothes and toiletries. He attempted to ask me if I really wasn't going to talk to him, but I just ignored him for the moment. Just seeing his face made my fury ignite, and I wished to be strategic about our conversation. After a while, he relinquished and simply went to dine in the dining room. When I was finished, I went and sat with him at the table, but left the food untouched. I initiated a voice recording on my phone before I said, "Go ahead." He regarded me with confusion, so I told him he was the one that wanted to talk and must have so much to say. "So go ahead." He fumbled with his words for a while, but eventually commenced with an apology. Attempting to explain he hadn't understood, I was so upset with Kayla's behavior. I asked him if he remembered how intensely I wept after I got home from dress shopping because of her remarks about my choices and my body. If he remembered needing to speak with her about not being my maid of honor. If he remembered our discussion only a few days prior, where I told him canceling my venue that held so much sentiment to me was far too egregious. He said he did each time and endeavored to insert a "but" to contend, but I just interrupted him with my next example. I told him that after all of that, he 100% should have known I was utterly fed up with her BLLSHT. I told him I was so hurt and angry that I wanted her uninvited, but he wanted to give her another chance? To do what? Cancel our DJ and book a live band, dye my dress red, or show up in white herself. He told me she would never do that. I told him he had told me she would never cancel my venue. Yet she admitted to it right in front of us. I told him I don't trust his judgment regarding his sister, and that he is just as deluded as she is if he thinks she will change. I asked him why he even shared so many details of our wedding with her anyway. Why does her opinion for our wedding even matter? He tried to tell me that because Kayla didn't get to have a real wedding when she got married, she was just a little too enthusiastic about ours. I told him she has every right in the world to be excited, but that does not grant her any rights to insult or alter our choices regarding what we want for our wedding. She'll have plenty of chances to have a real wedding. If she could pause for 2 seconds and remove her nose from our wedding business, she could go out and find a man or woman to marry herself. Poor soul, whoever that may be, I asked him, what's next? She gets to name our baby since she lost her own? The look on his face made my stomach feel hollow. He told me, and I quote, "Actually, Kayla does have a few ideas for what we could name our daughter." Daughter? As a side note, I'd previously mentioned in a comment that we were waiting to be surprised about our baby's gender. We'd been discussing baby names and had agreed on our top 3 for each gender. We agreed to keep those to ourselves until the baby arrived. I asked if he'd said daughter, and he looked like a deer caught in headlights. He tried to backtrack, but I pressed the matter. I asked him directly if he knew our baby's gender. He hesitated, but eventually admitted he remembered I'd filled out an information release form at my initial OB visit. So he called the office and requested the results of our gender scan, pretending we'd changed our minds and that he was planning a reveal for me. I felt absolutely sick and violated. I asked him what the fuck he was thinking. He said Kayla was feeling excluded since Sam was organizing my baby shower and hadn't included her, and that she simply couldn't wait to find out. I demanded he tell me everything. What else had he gone behind my back to do? Did he give her the notion to pretend to be our wedding planner? Was he the one who had her cancel my venue and alter our catering? He attempted to tell me no, of course not. She did that on her own. But I could simply tell he was lying. He absolutely instigated all of this. At that point, I didn't even care why he did. It's clear that none of our decisions will ever truly be ours. He will always do whatever he wants and get Kayla to support him. I don't even want to consider how many of our past decisions were completely sabotaged and altered by these two. I asked him if Kayla came to him and told him everything I'm telling him now, that she doesn't feel supported by her partner, that her partner went behind her back to discover their baby's gender without her, that her partner was retroactively changing every decision they had agreed upon, that her partner was allowing their sibling to relentlessly bully her. What would he say to her? He had no response, and honestly, if he did, I didn't want to hear it anymore. I already knew the answer. I told him that as the woman who was meant to be his wife, I and the baby I'm carrying should be his top priority, not his twin sister. I said his going behind my back like this for something as significant as our baby's gender is absolutely unforgivable. There is nothing he can say or do to fix this now. I told him I will no longer be marrying him, but it's up to him if he wants to cancel all the vendors. I said, "You're more than welcome to use it all to marry Kayla, seeing as she's the one you clearly care about most." He tried to backtrack, apologize, and explain, but each time I just cut him off and told him that I had heard enough, and my mind was made up. There is no turning back now. If he wants even the slightest chance to win me back and have a genuine relationship with our baby, he'll need to attend some serious therapy and put a lot of effort into himself and his connection with Kayla. I told him no woman in her right mind would ever marry him while he was so entangled with her. I told him that any contact we have moving forward will be through my lawyer. I want nothing to do with his family, and if I get my way, they will have nothing to do with my daughter, because I'll be damned if I let him subject her to this treatment. I placed my lawyer's name and phone number on the table and walked out. He didn't attempt to follow me. So now, besides dealing with my lawyer for the custody case, do I have to file a complaint with my OB office? Are they permitted to simply give him this information without my explicit consent? Or did me foolishly putting him on the information release form I signed grant them blanket consent to share any and all information with him? God, I didn't think this could get any worse, but I suppose that's on me for being naive. I'm glad I recorded the conversation, though, and got him to admit to doing all of this. I don't know how or if it will aid my custody case, but I sent it to my lawyer with a note that we can discuss more on Friday. I'm back at Sam's place now. She was already at work when I returned, but I texted her to wake me up when she arrives home. I need my sister. I also phoned my mom and told her everything that's occurred so far. She cried with me for a bit and then inquired if I needed anything from her. I asked her if she'd be willing to go to the house with Sam and retrieve the rest of my belongings, because I do not wish to see Nate at the moment. Simply picturing his face is making me feel ill. She affirmed she is more than willing. Kayla did message me again. I'm assuming Nate spoke with her after I departed. It was a very lengthy, cruel message that I don't wish to reiterate here. I can post a screenshot if anyone desires the complete message, should I figure out how to attach one. But to summarize, she simply called me a delusional control freak who can't allow Nate to make any decisions for himself, and once again disparaged my venue choice, and then stated that she hopes my baby is stillborn because I don't merit being a mother. Honestly, after reading it, I believed the message would sting, but it just gave me a really hearty laugh. I took a screenshot and forwarded it to my lawyer as well, and that's our current situation. The wedding is canceled. I will contact all the vendors tomorrow and see if we can recover any deposits. If not, I'll inform them to reach out to Nate and Kayla to see if they would prefer to maintain things as planned. Let them host a party, for all I care. But I will be canceling my venue, irrespective of my refund. Neither of them will set foot in that sacred place if I can prevent it. I hadn't realized how much I was allowing this to burden me until now. I feel as though a significant burden has been lifted from me, even though a new one is settling in quite rapidly. Documenting everything this way is genuinely incredibly helpful for me to process my emotions and what I need to accomplish. I'm unsure if I'll continue providing formal updates, but for anyone interested, perhaps I'll simply use this profile as a small journal as all of this unravels. My gratitude again to everyone for all your counsel and for demonstrating that I'm not losing my mind. This next one will make your jaw drop. 9 years ago, when my son Jake was 6 and my daughter Emma was 4, my ex-wife Sarah made the choice that would fundamentally change all our lives forever. We had been experiencing a difficult period in our marriage, which wasn't solely her fault, as I was working long hours and likely wasn't the most attentive husband, but we were both striving to make our family succeed. The issue began when Sarah started spending time with a circle of friends from her yoga class, women who were all either divorced or had never been married and seemed to hold firm opinions about traditional family structures and what they viewed as limitations that marriage and motherhood placed on a woman's personal growth. These companions, particularly a woman named Jessica, who had left her own family years earlier and was living what she called her authentic life traveling the country in a converted van, began filling Sarah's head with ideas about how she was wasting her youth by being tied down to domestic responsibilities. Initially, I thought it was merely a phase and encouraged her to take weekend trips with these companions, even offering to take on more childcare responsibilities so she could have the freedom to pursue her interests. However, instead of aiding our relationship, this worsened matters because the more time she spent away from home, the more detached she grew from me and the kids, and the more persuaded she became that she had made a grave error by marrying and having children at such a young age. The tipping point arrived during what I believed would be a family vacation to the beach. Instead of savoring our time together, Sarah spent the majority of the trip on the phone with Jessica and her friends, discussing how confined she felt and how she had to make significant changes before time ran out. On our final evening at the beach, after the kids had fallen asleep, Sarah informed me she had resolved to depart from us and begin anew somewhere she could discover her true self, free from family duties. She said Jessica had provided her with accommodation in California, and that she believed it would be more beneficial for everyone if she simply vanished from our lives instead of remaining a cause of unhappiness. I was utterly crushed and attempted every means to persuade her to remain: marriage counseling, individual therapy, temporary separation, even an open marriage. But her resolve was set, and she regarded any effort to alter her choice as seeking to control her and hinder her from experiencing her genuine life. The most difficult aspect was watching how perplexed and devastated Jake and Emma were when Sarah explained that she was leaving for a period and would be remaining with me. But she vowed this did not signify she cared for them less, and that she would return to visit once she was established. Jake continually inquired if he had committed an error to make Mommy desire to depart, while Emma simply wept and pleaded with Sarah not to leave. Once Sarah departed, I became a single father to two young children, coping with abandonment issues and continually inquiring when their mother was returning home, while also handling my own emotions of betrayal and sorrow. The initial months were harsh as I learned how to manage work, child rearing, domestic duties, and my mental state, while assisting Jake and Emma in understanding their emotions and endeavoring to establish stability in their lives. Sarah would call sometimes during the first year, typically late in the evening when she had been drinking and experiencing guilt. But these conversations were perplexing and distressing for the kids because she would offer pledges about visiting that never came to pass. Eventually, I altered our phone number and requested her to cease calling because the sporadic communication was exacerbating matters for Jake and Emma, who would have their hopes raised and then become heartbroken when she vanished once more. Roughly 3 years after Sarah departed, I encountered my present wife Lisa at a school event, where she was volunteering as Emma's educator, and what began as friendship slowly evolved into something more profound. Lisa was remarkably patient concerning the burdens I bore and the difficulties of dating an individual, with children still coping with trauma from their mother's abandonment. What struck me most about Lisa was how effortlessly she bonded with Jake and Emma, never attempting to supplant their mother or compel a relationship, but simply being there and unwavering in a manner that permitted them to slowly confide in her. She would assist Emma with schoolwork, go to Jake's soccer matches, and progressively become essential to our everyday practices, without it seeming contrived. After Lisa and I had been a couple for roughly 2 years, we began discussing adoption. Lisa was dedicated to being their parent, irrespective of what transpired between her and me. The adoption procedure was uncomplicated because Sarah had virtually vanished entirely and made no endeavor to uphold contact or offer monetary aid, which legally amounted to abandonment. When the adoption was completed last year, it was among the most joyful days of our lives. Jake and Emma, now 15 and 13, have matured into remarkable teenagers who have forged a profound connection with Lisa, whom they refer to as Mom, without any urging from us. They still recall their biological mother, but their memories have grown faint and been supplanted by the reality of the family they now have, and they perceive Sarah more as a figure from their distant past than someone with current relevance to their lives. 3 weeks ago, Sarah appeared at our front door completely unexpectedly, appearing older yet otherwise largely unchanged, asserting she had been contemplating us incessantly and had at last recognized that departing was the greatest error of her life and that she desired to return and rejoin our family. She stated that she had passed 9 years journeying across the nation, holding diverse occupations, investigating varied lifestyles and connections, attempting to discover herself, yet nothing had yielded the contentment she anticipated, and she had progressively grasped that the joy she was seeking had been right here with us all the while. I was astonished to behold her because I had presumed she had entirely moved forward. I asked her inside for coffee and phoned Lisa to return home early so we could determine how to manage this jointly. Lisa was remarkably courteous, despite how uneasy she felt due to Sarah's abrupt return. Sarah appeared truly regretful and admitted she had committed a grave error, but she also had impractical expectations about being able to merely re-enter our lives, as though the past 9 years had never occurred. She expressed a desire to spend time with Jake and Emma, accompany them on excursions, assist with homework, attend school events, and slowly restore the mother-child relationship she had abandoned. The true challenge arose when Jake and Emma returned home from school to discover their biological mother sitting in our living room. The kids' responses were instant and clear. Jake grew visibly irate and questioned Sarah why she had returned, and if she anticipated them to simply overlook everything and embrace her again, while Emma hid behind Lisa and declined to even glance at Sarah. Both kids stated plainly they held no desire for a connection with Sarah and regarded Lisa as their true mother presently. Sarah was crushed by their refusal and endeavored to clarify she comprehended their fury and was prepared to proceed cautiously, but Jake interrupted, stating there was naught she could do to compensate for 9 years of absence, and that they already possessed a mother who genuinely cared for them. After Sarah left, Lisa and I held an extensive discussion with the kids about what they wanted us to do, clarifying we would uphold any choice they reached and that they should not feel compelled to maintain a connection with Sarah if they didn't want to. Both Jake and Emma were insistent that they desired no involvement with Sarah and did not want her coming to our home anymore or attempting to reach them at school, and they requested us to ensure she grasped they were content with their current family and did not require her in their lives. So here is where I might be the jerk. I contacted Sarah and informed her that while I understood her wish to reconnect, the children had expressed their sentiments clearly, and I was going to honor their desires and not compel them into a relationship against their will. I clarified they were mature enough to make their own choices about who they wanted in their lives, and that after 9 years of establishing a stable family with Lisa, they were not keen on disrupting that for someone who had willingly departed. Sarah grew upset and accused me of turning the kids against her and preventing her from exercising her parental rights, threatening legal action to force visitation or seek partial custody, though I'm not sure she has any legal standing after abandoning them and allowing Lisa to adopt them. I truly don't know if I'm doing the right thing, and I constantly doubt myself because while I think Sarah's abrupt desire to be a mother again is likely more about her guilt than true concern for what's best for Jake and Emma, I wonder if I'm denying them the opportunity to have a relationship with their biological mother. So Reddit, Ida, for supporting my kids' decision to refuse contact with their biological mother, or should I be encouraging them to give her a chance? Update 1. Quick update for those following along, because things have unfolded in ways I didn't expect, and I could use additional perspective on how we're handling Sarah's ongoing attempts to insert herself into our family's life. After going through your thoughtful comments, I decided to schedule consultations with both a family attorney and a therapist specializing in adoption issues, because I wanted to ensure I was approaching this with Jake and Emma's best interests in mind, rather than simply reacting emotionally. The legal consultation was very informative and a great relief, because the attorney affirmed what many of you proposed, that Sarah's legal rights as a parent were legally concluded when she abandoned the children, and Lisa was able to adopt them without needing Sarah's agreement. In our state, parental rights can be terminated for abandonment when a parent has had no communication for over a year and neglected to offer financial assistance, and both of these clearly fit Sarah's situation. In practice, this signifies Sarah has no legal basis to request visitation or custody, and any effort to dispute the adoption would necessitate her demonstrating she was stopped from keeping in touch unwillingly, which plainly isn't true since she opted to depart and made no attempt to remain connected. I called Sarah to have a straightforward talk about the actual circumstances, expecting that if I clarified the legal realities and the kids' wishes, she might agree that continuing this would be pointless and possibly damaging. The conversation did not proceed as expected, but it offered a glimpse into Sarah's way of thinking. When I explained that adoption had officially ended her parental rights, Sarah grew upset and charged me with employing legal loopholes to separate her from her kids, as if the adoption were some administrative ploy, rather than a logical outcome of her desertion. What became apparent is that Sarah has created a story about her departure that downplays her accountability and emphasizes external elements, like her friends' suggestions and mental health challenges. She kept referring to leaving as something that occurred to her rather than a decision she made, and appeared genuinely astonished there would be enduring repercussions. She also held unrealistic expectations about repairing relationships with Jake and Emma, speaking about wanting to take them on trips and assist with college planning, as if the past 9 years had been a brief pause rather than most of their conscious recollections. When I explained both children were firm about not wanting contact and that I would honor their wishes, Sarah started crying, stating she understood their anger but was a changed person now and deserved an opportunity to show she could be the mother they required. Instead of continuing to threaten legal action, Sarah inquired if there might be some way to communicate with Jake and Emma indirectly, perhaps through letters or phone calls, that would enable her to apologize without compelling in-person meetings they didn't desire. I informed her I would discuss this with Lisa and the kids, making it plain any communication would be completely optional and could cease at any point if it grew uncomfortable. When I raised this with Jake and Emma, their responses were distinct but equally intense. After multiple family discussions and a therapy session, Emma decided she would be prepared to accept Sarah's phone number and perhaps chat occasionally, but only if Sarah understood this wasn't an indication Emma wanted a relationship or was receptive to in-person meetings. Jake remained strongly against any contact, and I stressed to Sarah that she needed to fully honor his choice. So yesterday I provided Sarah with Emma's phone number, and Jake decided to give his number as well, though he was clear that he wasn't guaranteeing to answer calls and could alter his decision whenever. I also established distinct limits about when and how often Sarah could call, requesting she restrict communication to once or twice weekly and refrain from calling during school time or late in the evening. Sarah was extremely thankful for this agreement and vowed to be mindful of the limits and not push the children for additional interaction than they were comfortable with. Though I remain doubtful about whether she'll truly adhere to these restrictions, given how eagerly she appears to wish to reestablish ties. I'm genuinely uncertain if I made the right decision, because a part of me fears that any contact will instill false hope in Sarah, that she can eventually gradually regain a more important position, resulting in greater letdown and disagreement. At the same time, I don't want to be the one deciding this for Jake and Emma, especially since Emma showed true interest in limited contact. I suppose we'll see how this unfolds, but I wish to inform everyone who had been tracking our situation and let you know that your guidance about putting the children's emotional welfare first has been exceptionally beneficial. Update 2. As noted in my previous update, we had consented to let Sarah have restricted phone contact with the agreement that interaction would be completely optional, and she would honor our set limits regarding how often and when. For the initial few days, this appeared to function quite effectively. Sarah called Emma twice during the week, and Emma indeed answered both times, engaging in short but courteous talks about school and her hobbies. Though Emma confided in me later that the discussions felt strange and unnatural, and she wasn't certain what to tell someone who was essentially a stranger, yet kept calling herself Emma's mother. Jake, true to what he said, declined to answer Sarah's calls, and ultimately blocked her number after she rang multiple times in a single day, which I considered a sensible method to uphold his boundary. The issue began this week when Emma, grappling with midterm assessments and a major presentation she was anxious about, ceased answering Sarah's calls because she was occupied with studying and lacked the emotional capacity for what she characterized as uncomfortable discussions with someone who doesn't truly know me. Instead of understanding that a 13-year-old might have other priorities, Sarah grew more and more worried about not reaching Emma and started calling more often and leaving increasingly frantic voicemails, asking Emma to please call back because she was concerned she had said something incorrectly or that Emma was being stopped from speaking to her. Emma showed me some of these voicemails, and they were troubling because Sarah sounded very emotional and almost desperate, talking about how much she missed Emma and how vital these conversations were to her mental well-being and her aspiration for mending their relationship. One message especially troubled me because Sarah stated she had been anticipating their talks all week, and that not hearing from Emma was bringing back all the sensations of loss and remorse. When I spoke to Emma about the voicemails, she confessed they were making her feel guilty and stressed, and that she was beginning to regret agreeing to any contact because she felt Sarah was anticipating more than she was able or willing to offer. She mentioned talking to Sarah felt like a chore rather than something she desired to do. I assured Emma that she didn't owe Sarah anything and could cease taking calls at any time without feeling guilty, and we concurred. She would take a pause from phone contact to concentrate on school tasks and allow herself room to ponder whether she wished to continue this setup. But instead of respecting Emma's need for space or checking with me about why calls weren't being answered, Sarah made a choice that has entirely destroyed any faith I might have had in her capacity to prioritize the children's needs over her own wishes. Yesterday afternoon, I received a call from Emma's school counselor informing me that an unidentified woman had come to the school, claiming to be Emma's mother and insisting on seeing her, and that the school had to call security when the woman grew agitated and refused to leave when told she wasn't authorized to visit Emma. Evidently, Sarah had gone to the school office during lunch and informed the secretary she was Emma's biological mother and had to speak with her daughter due to a family emergency. And when school staff reviewed their records and noted that Lisa was listed as Emma's mother in emergency contact, they informed Sarah they couldn't permit her to see Emma without proper authorization. The counselor stated that Sarah grew quite upset and began arguing with staff, claiming there had been some mistake in their records and that she was Emma's true mother and possessed every right to see her child, and that the school was interfering with her parental rights. The situation intensified when Sarah evidently tried to find Emma herself, pacing through hallways and peering into classrooms, which led the school to call security and eventually police to remove her from the premises. When I collected Emma from school, she was visibly upset and embarrassed, and repeatedly asked why Sarah had appeared at her school, and whether this implied Sarah would continue appearing in places where Emma was meant to feel secure. She also expressed feeling in some way her fault for not answering Sarah's calls, which truly saddened me because a 13-year-old should never bear responsibility for an adult's improper actions. I promptly contacted Sarah and told her unequivocally that going to Emma's school was totally unacceptable and that she had breached every limit we had established and broken the trust we had placed in her. I clarified that her behavior had scared Emma and generated precisely the sort of turmoil we had been attempting to prevent. Sarah reacted by growing defensive and emotional, stating she was concerned about Emma because she hadn't communicated with her for a few days, and simply wished to confirm Emma was all right and to explain that she hadn't intended to pressure her through the voicemails. She asserted she hadn't meant to create issues and had told the school there was a family emergency because she didn't know any other way to get them to allow her to see Emma. When I indicated that no family emergency existed and that she had basically misled school personnel and attempted to bypass safety procedures, Sarah said that her inability to speak with her daughter felt like an emergency to her, and that she couldn't grasp why everyone was complicating this so much when all she desired was a connection with her children. This response underscored how profoundly Sarah misinterprets the situation and how egocentric her method has been. She also said she felt like this was somehow her fault for not answering Sarah's calls, which utterly broke my heart because a 13-year-old should never feel accountable for an adult's improper conduct. I promptly called Sarah and told her unequivocally that visiting Emma's school was totally unacceptable and that she had breached every limit we had set and betrayed the trust we had placed in her. I clarified that her actions had scared Emma and generated precisely the kind of turmoil we had been trying to avoid. Sarah's reaction was to grow defensive and emotional, stating she had been concerned about Emma because she hadn't heard from her in several days and just wanted to confirm Emma was all right and to explain that she hadn't meant to pressure her with the voicemails. She asserted she hadn't intended to cause issues and had told the school there was a family emergency because she didn't know any other way to get them to allow her to see Emma. When I indicated that no family emergency existed and that she had essentially misled school officials and attempted to bypass safety protocols, Sarah said that her inability to speak with her daughter felt like an emergency to her and that she couldn't grasp why everyone was complicating this so much when all she wanted was a relationship with her children. This reaction underscored how fundamentally Sarah misinterprets the situation and how egocentric her approach has been. She perceives any impediment to direct access to Jake and Emma as an unjust obstruction to her maternal rights, instead of comprehending that her children are individuals with their own emotions and entitlement to privacy and security. I informed Sarah that her conduct at the school had removed any chance of ongoing phone communication and that she needed to remain completely separate from our family, including not appearing at locations where the children might be. I also notified her that if she breached these limits again, I would seek a restraining order. Sarah grew quite distressed and began weeping, stating I was being harsh and leveraging her error to penalize her and keep her from her children indefinitely. But I clarified this wasn't about punishment. It was about safeguarding Jake and Emma from someone who had demonstrated she couldn't honor their independence or place their welfare above her own wishes. Both children have expressed very clearly they wish for no additional contact with Sarah following this event, and Emma appears relieved that she no longer has to fret about handling Sarah's expectations. I'm truly regretting agreeing to any communication whatsoever, because I sense I should have realized that someone who deserted her children for 9 years and then appeared demanding an instant relationship likely lacked the emotional steadiness to honor sensible limits. I'll keep you informed about whether Sarah honors the no-contact limit or if we need to seek legal protection, but for now, we're concentrating on helping Jake and Emma feel protected and safe, and reminding them that Sarah's conduct is not their responsibility. Update 3. Following the school incident I detailed in my previous update, we had put in place strict no contact with Sarah and made it evident to both children that they no longer needed to worry about handling her expectations and that they could concentrate on their usual lives without the strain of managing a relationship with someone who had shown themselves incapable of honoring their limits. For roughly a week, this appeared to function effectively, and both Jake and Emma seemed relieved to have the matter settled in a manner that permitted them to progress, without persistent worry about when Sarah might phone or appear without warning. Nonetheless, this past Friday evening, Emma approached me and Lisa with a request that genuinely astonished both of us, and that I'm still uncertain we managed appropriately. Emma informed us she had been reflecting on the voicemails Sarah had left prior to the school incident, and that although she certainly didn't desire any continuing relationship with Sarah, she felt she needed to phone her once to plainly articulate her choice and tell Sarah personally that she didn't wish for more contact, instead of simply having me convey this message for her. Emma said she felt a sense of guilt regarding how matters had concluded, with Sarah being escorted from school grounds and then being informed via me that all communication was ended, and that she thought Sarah merited hearing directly from Emma why she didn't desire a relationship, even if that discussion would be challenging and conclusive. Lisa and I conversed about this at length with Emma, ensuring she grasped that she wasn't obligated to give Sarah any explanation and that safeguarding her own welfare held greater importance than handling Sarah's emotions. We also spoke about the chance that phoning Sarah might offer her misleading hope, or that Sarah might exploit the chance to push Emma for additional contact. However, Emma was quite explicit about what she aimed to achieve and appeared to have considered the potential hazards thoroughly. She stated she wished to tell Sarah that while she didn't despise her and understood Sarah regretted departing, the harm had occurred and too much time had elapsed for them to forge the sort of mother-daughter bond Sarah appeared to desire. We consented the call would be conducted on speakerphone, so Lisa and I could oversee the dialogue and intercede if required, and that Emma would possess a written compilation of points she wished to convey so she wouldn't be sidetracked if Sarah grew emotional. The telephone conversation occurred this past Saturday afternoon, and it transpired both more favorably and less favorably than any of us had foreseen. Emma was remarkably mature in articulating her feelings to Sarah, informing her that she valued Sarah's apologies and wished to reconcile, but that she had established a life and family that excluded Sarah, and that she had no wish to alter that or jeopardize the safety and contentment she had discovered with Lisa as her mother. Sarah, to her credit, listened without interruption or attempting to dispute, and appeared to grasp that this was Emma's conclusive choice. She informed Emma that she felt proud of the person Emma had become, and that she was pleased Emma had discovered contentment and steadiness, even if it wasn't with her. However, as the conversation neared its conclusion, Sarah grew quite emotional and told Emma that she comprehended why Emma didn't desire her in her life, and that she recognized she had committed irreversible errors that had deprived her of the opportunity to be a mother to her children. She stated she had been hoping that returning and offering apologies would somehow compensate for the years she had lost, but that she now understood that some harm cannot be reversed, and some decisions cannot be retracted. What was especially troubling about Sarah's tone during this segment was how conclusive and despairing it sounded, as though she was bidding farewell not merely to the prospect of a relationship with Emma, but to all else concurrently. She continued speaking about how she had destroyed everything and how she didn't merit happiness after what she had done. And while Emma managed this maturely by concentrating on her own choices instead of attempting to console Sarah, I could tell that she was becoming distressed by how hopeless Sarah sounded. The call concluded with Sarah thanking Emma for being courageous enough to speak with her directly and informing her that she hoped Emma would experience a wonderful life and that she was sorry for all the suffering her reappearance had inflicted. Emma informed Sarah she forgave her for leaving and wished Sarah would find happiness in her own life, but that they would not speak again. After we ended the call, Emma appeared relieved after the conversation and content, that she had managed to convey her feelings clearly and kindly, though she was also emotionally exhausted and spent the remainder of the weekend processing her emotions with Lisa and me. We believed this discussion had offered the closure both Emma and Sarah required to proceed with their separate lives, and that while it had been emotionally challenging, it had ultimately been a healthy means to conclude this chapter. However, then, this past Tuesday morning, I got a phone call that altered everything and made me wonder if we should have managed this situation differently from the very start. The call came from a hospital social worker in the city where Sarah resides, informing me that Sarah had been admitted to their psychiatric unit following what seemed to be a suicide attempt, and that I was listed as her emergency contact from when we were married, despite us having been divorced for 9 years. As per the social worker, Sarah had taken an overdose of prescription medication sometime Monday night and had been discovered by her landlord when she failed to pay her rent. She had left a message apologizing for the pain she had caused her family and stating that she understood she had forfeited her children forever and could not bear the guilt and regret of her choices. I was utterly stunned and appalled by this news, and my immediate thought was to question whether Emma's phone call had somehow instigated Sarah's suicide attempt, and whether I was culpable for placing Sarah in a perilous psychological condition by backing Emma's phone call, had somehow instigated Sarah's suicide attempt, and whether I was culpable for placing Sarah in a perilous psychological condition by backing Emma's choice to cease all communication permanently. At present, I have only informed Lisa. I also contacted the hospital social worker and clarified our family's circumstances, including that Sarah had deserted the children 9 years ago and that any contact with her had been distressing and unsettling for them. I requested the social worker to communicate to Sarah that while we wished she would receive the mental health treatment she required, we would not be visiting or engaging in her care whatsoever. I also furnished the social worker with contact details for Sarah's sister, who resides nationwide but who could potentially offer family support during Sarah's recovery, since I felt that Sarah should not be entirely isolated during this crisis, even if we could not be the ones to offer that assistance. The social worker was quite understanding about our position and reassured me that the hospital staff would not compel us to have contact with Sarah against our wishes, and that they would concentrate on linking her with appropriate mental health resources and support systems that did not involve her children. Several days have passed since I got that phone call, and I'm still grappling with inquiries about whether we could have managed this situation differently, whether there were cautionary signs we missed, and whether safeguarding my children from Sarah's instability was worth the hazard that she might harm herself as a result of feeling entirely rejected. I wish to update everyone who has been following our story because this development clearly alters the nature of the situation significantly, and because I'm hoping that sharing our experience might be beneficial to other families dealing with comparable challenges around estranged parents who want to reconnect with children who have moved on with their lives. Now, on to a story that will leave you speechless. I, 26 Enum, have been with my girlfriend Mia, 25F, for around 2.5 years, living together for the past year. We're having a continuous disagreement about how we spend our weekends, and I honestly can't tell if I'm being unreasonable or if we just want different things. For context, I work a lot at a startup. The hours can be quite intense, usually 55 hours a week, sometimes more during crunch periods. I truly love what I do, but by Friday evening, I'm mentally drained. My ideal weekend involves sleeping in, cooking a nice dinner together, perhaps watching a movie or playing some video games. Occasionally I'm up for going out, but perhaps once or twice a month at most. Mia also works for a mid-sized company with much more regular hours. She's naturally more extroverted and has always been the social one in our relationship. She wants to go out most Friday and Saturday nights, bars, clubs, parties, dinner with friends, concerts, and so on. Before we moved in together, this wasn't as much of an issue because we just do our own things on weekends and hang out during the week. Now that we're living together, it's become a source of continuous tension. She says I've become boring and that she feels like she's dating someone much older. Weekends and hang out during the week. Now that we're living together, it's become a source of continuous tension. She says I've become boring and that she feels like she's dating someone much older. She's not wrong that I've changed. When we initially began dating, I was working a different job with an improved work-life balance and had more energy for social outings. But she's also changed too. She's become more involved in the party scene since making new friends at work about a year ago. The issue reached a peak last weekend. She wanted to go to her colleague's birthday party on Friday, which I was fine with. Then Saturday, she wanted to go bar to bar with the same group. I told her I preferred to stay in on Saturday and she could go without me. She became upset and said it feels as though I never want to spend time with her anymore, and that her friends are beginning to inquire why I never join them. I attempted to explain that spending time together doesn't necessarily mean going out and drinking, but she said I am being selfish and only considering what I wish to do. She also noted that her friend Rachel has been making comments about how home-focused we've become, which is seemingly not a good thing in Rachel's view. I don't believe I'm being unreasonable. I put in a lot of effort during the week and simply want to relax on weekends. I'm not attempting to control what she does. She's at liberty to go out whenever she wishes. But I also shouldn't be compelled to go out when I don't wish to, right? Am I wrong for preferring to stay home most weekends? Am I truly being boring and selfish? To clarify some points people have inquired about, yes, I do occasionally join her for outings, perhaps 2, 3 times a month, and yes, we do spend time together at home. But she's typically on her phone, messaging her friends about upcoming plans for going out. Comment 1, nah. This sounds like a core compatibility problem rather than either of you being jerks. You both have valid needs. You need quiet time to recuperate. She needs social interaction to feel content. The troubling aspect is that she's allowing her friends to sway her perception of your relationship. Rachel appears to be causing trouble. Have you two had an earnest discussion about what you both need from the relationship? Because this might be more significant than just weekend arrangements. Op reply. You're likely correct that we need to have a more extensive discussion. What you said about Rachel is precisely right. She's single and appears to believe that being in a relationship implies you should still be living as if you're unattached. She's continually making remarks about how Mia is losing out or how we're too established for our age. I've tried to delicately raise the topic of compatibility, but Mia consistently tells me I'm overthinking things and that I simply need to relax. But honestly, I'm starting to feel like we want basically different ways of life. When we first moved in together, I thought we'd discover a healthy equilibrium, but it feels like we're both just making concessions, and neither of us is truly content. The annoying aspect is that I truly appreciate the time we spend at home together, preparing dinner, watching programs, simply conversing. But she seems restless during those times now, like she's anticipating something more exciting. Last Sunday, we had a truly pleasant morning preparing breakfast together, but by the afternoon, she was already messaging her friends regarding plans for the upcoming weekend. I'm beginning to question if this is simply our dynamic now, and if it's viable in the long run. Comment 2. I work a lot too, and I completely understand the feeling of exhaustion. Working at a startup is not to be taken lightly, and those who haven't experienced it don't grasp how mentally taxing it can be. You're certainly not a jerk for requiring relaxation. That said, your girlfriend is not incorrect for wishing to socialize and enjoy herself. You guys could simply be in distinct life stages at present. The question is whether you can discover a compromise that suits both of you. Op reply. I appreciate you understanding my work circumstances. I think you're right about being in different phases. The odd part is that Mia used to be more empathetic about my work schedule. When I first started at the startup 2 years ago, she was actually very supportive and would bring me dinner when I was working late and similar gestures. But a change occurred when she started spending time with this new circle of colleagues. They're all very social and appear to socialize several times a week. I think being around them has caused her to feel like she's missing out, even though before this, she was completely content with our more subdued way of life. I've been contemplating whether I should seek a job with a better work-life balance, but honestly, I adore what I do, and I'm acquiring so much knowledge. Additionally, we're potentially looking at an acquisition next year, which could be financially transformative. It feels like poor timing to make a significant career shift merely to have more energy for partying, you know? I suppose I'm hoping we can discover that middle ground you mentioned, but I'm not yet certain what it entails. Comment 3. I'm going to take a different stance here and ask why. Relationships demand effort and compromise. Going out 2, 3 times a month isn't exactly being a social butterfly. Your girlfriend is 25 and desires to have fun. That's entirely normal. You're behaving like an elderly married couple when you're not even engaged. If you can't be bothered to engage in her social life, don't be surprised when she begins to question the relationship. Op reply. I understand your point, and perhaps I haven't been compromising sufficiently, but I believe there's a distinction between not being bothered to participate and genuinely lacking the energy or inclination to go out multiple times every week. I've been attempting to consider this more objectively, and here's what our typical month looks like. She goes out with friends 2 to 3 times during the week, happy hours, dinner, and so forth. and wants to go out both Friday and Saturday most weekends. That amounts to roughly 12 to 15 social events per month. I'd accompany her for maybe 2 to 3 of those. Therefore, while I recognize that relationships involve compromise, I'm already socializing more than I naturally would, and she's staying home more than she naturally would. The real question is whether we're finding a balance, or if that middle ground simply isn't suitable for either of us. You're correct that she desires to have fun, and I don't wish to prevent her from doing so. However, I also don't believe I should have to feign enjoyment of things I genuinely don't enjoy, merely to keep her content. When I go out and am visibly not enjoying myself, it impacts her enjoyment as well. Update. It's been roughly 3 weeks since my initial post, and regrettably, matters have deteriorated instead of improving. I wanted to provide an update because many people offered truly thoughtful advice, and I've been attempting to put some of it into practice. After reviewing the comments, I chose to have the earnest discussion that several individuals recommended. I selected a calm Sunday morning when we were both at ease and raised the compatibility worries that had been troubling me. The discussion did not proceed as favorably as I had anticipated. When I clarified that I was sensing we might desire distinct things from our weekends and our relationship overall, Mia became defensive. She stated she felt as though I was attempting to make her feel guilty for wanting to live her life and that I was being overly dramatic about what she termed typical relationship growing pains. But then she said something that truly stung. I feel like I'm dating someone who's 40, not 26. I miss the person you were when we first started dating. We used to have fun together, and now you act like going out is a huge burden. I attempted to explain again about the work situation and how my energy levels have shifted, but she interrupted me and said, "Everyone works. Most people don't use their job as an excuse to turn into a recluse." That stung because I don't believe I'm a recluse. I just have different notions about what's enjoyable and calming. But it made me realize she's not merely let down by weekend plans. She's disappointed in the person I've grown into. Since that discussion, things have been quite strained. I tried harder to go out more often to show I was attempting to compromise. Over the past 3 weeks, I've joined her and her friends 6 times. But honestly, it's been awful for me. I spend the entire time feeling exhausted and checking my phone to see what time it is. Her friends have certainly observed it. Last Friday, her friend Rachel remarked that I seemed like I'd rather be anywhere else, which was spot on. The issue is that when Mia stays in with me, she's just as unhappy. She'll agree to a movie night, but she spends the entire time on her phone, either scrolling social media or messaging her friends about their activities. Last Saturday, we ordered takeout and tried to watch a series together, but she was plainly distracted and kept commenting on how dull our Saturday night felt. So now we're in this odd predicament where we're both compromising, but neither of us is truly happy. When we go out, I'm counting down the minutes until we can head home. When we stay in, her mind is completely elsewhere. I'm starting to believe that those who called this a core compatibility problem were right. We desire different things from our leisure time, and more significantly, we seek different things from our partnership. I cherish the calm, close moments we once shared, but she appears to find them dull now. She enjoys the thrill and vigor of going out, but that environment feels draining and contrived to me. I'm unsure what step to take next. Neither of us is incorrect for desiring what we do, but I'm not certain there's a resolution that satisfies us both. Comment 1. This is painful to read, but you're demonstrating much maturity and acknowledging what's occurring. It seems you've both moved past the relationship, but neither of you wishes to concede it yet. The reality that she's unhappy when you stay in and you're unhappy when you go out indicates the compromise isn't truly effective. You're simply alternating being unhappy, which is unsustainable. Op reply. You've articulated precisely what I've been sensing but couldn't express. We are alternating being unhappy, and it's beginning to impact all other aspects of our relationship. The hardest part is that we once complemented each other quite effectively. She assisted me in being more social and spontaneous, and I aided her in appreciating calmer moments. But now it feels as though, instead of balancing each other, we're merely tugging each other in undesired directions. I keep reflecting on something she mentioned during our discussion. I miss the person you used to be. The truth is, I don't believe I've fundamentally altered as a person. I believe my circumstances shifted, and my priorities moved accordingly. But perhaps she's correct that the person I am now isn't who she fell in love with. The question I keep posing to myself is whether individuals can develop in different directions and still make a relationship function, or if growth is meant to draw you closer together. Currently, it feels like we're drifting apart, and I don't know if that's repairable or if it's simply what occurs sometimes. Comment 2. I experienced something comparable with my ex-husband. We attempted to force compatibility for nearly 2 years, before eventually conceding we desired different lives. Looking back, we both realized it wasn't functioning much sooner than we conceded it. The friend group dynamic you brought up is also a red flag. When external individuals are actively undermining your relationship, it adds strain that makes everything more difficult. Reply. The friend group matter has certainly become more of a concern than I initially grasped. After reviewing comments on my first post, I began paying more heed to how Mia discusses our relationship when her friends are present. Last weekend, we attended a birthday party for one of her coworkers, and I overheard Rachel informing someone that Mia is too young to be committed and that she should be enjoying herself instead of staying home with her boyfriend. Later that evening, another friend inquired of Mia if she ever missed being unattached, directly in front of me. I believe her friends genuinely feel they're watching out for her, but they're essentially conveying to her that being in a serious relationship is something she ought to lament. That's truly difficult to contend with, particularly when I'm already striving to make her content. What's intriguing is that my friends have also begun making observations, but in the reverse direction. A few of them have noted that I appear stressed constantly now, and one of them directly questioned if I was content in my relationship. So we're both receiving external pressure, but it's driving us further apart instead of prompting us to resolve things. You brought up knowing it wasn't functioning sooner than you acknowledged it. I believe I'm at that stage now. The indications have been present for months, but I kept supposing we could mend it if we simply made more effort or communicated more effectively. But perhaps some matters cannot be remedied by effort alone. Update 2. I wish I had more positive news, but circumstances persist in their downward spiral. It's been approximately 2 months since my previous update, and we've been striving even more diligently to make concessions effective. But it's growing evident that we're merely postponing the unavoidable. After my last post, numerous individuals proposed and we attempt a more organized method for compromise, such as alternating weekends or establishing precise expectations. We chose to implement a system where we'd go out one weekend evening and remain in the other, with the individual whose turn it was having complete command over the activity. This continued for around 3 weeks before we both confessed it wasn't effective. On the evenings we went out, I discovered myself experiencing what I can only term as anxiety attacks. Not severe panic attacks, but a persistent low-level apprehension and weariness that rendered enjoyment of anything unfeasible. I would attempt to smile and engage in discussions, but I felt as if I were wearing a disguise the whole time. Mia could sense it, and it made her feel bad for pulling me out, which then caused her to feel annoyed that I was spoiling her enjoyment by being clearly uneasy. On the evenings we stayed indoors, Mia was physically present yet mentally absent. She'd propose a film, but then spend the whole duration messaging her friends about their activities. She'd set her phone aside when I requested, but then she'd be noticeably restless and would initiate discussions about how lifeless our neighborhood was, or how we never undertook anything impulsive anymore. The critical moment occurred 2 weeks ago. It was my opportunity to pick. so we remained home, and I prepared this intricate dinner that occupied me for most of the afternoon. I was genuinely enthusiastic about it. It felt like the sort of evening we once cherished. However, midway through dinner, her phone continued to buzz with texts from her friends who were attending a rooftop party downtown. She continued to apologize and set her phone aside, but I could tell how much she wished to be there instead. Eventually, I told her she ought to just go join them. She at first objected, but when I urged her, she was out the door within 15 minutes. I wound up having dinner by myself and felt foolish for believing a homemade dinner could contend with a rooftop party. Last weekend was her chance to pick, and we went to a club with her regular group. I spent $120 on beverages I didn't desire, stood around making casual conversation with individuals I scarcely knew, and observed Mia enjoying herself immensely. She was dancing, laughing, completely in her element. It was the most content I'd seen her in weeks. But this is what truly struck me. Observing her that evening, I realized that the person she is when she's out with her friends is who she genuinely is now. She's lively and dynamic and outgoing in a way that she is no longer when we're by ourselves. And in contrast, the person I am when I'm home on a quiet evening is who I genuinely am. We're not merely desiring distinct activities. We're transforming into different individuals. The ride home that night was silent. I think we both understood what I had just grasped. We haven't arranged any weekend activities since then. She's been out both evenings for the last 2 weekends, and I've stayed home. We're essentially cohabiting like housemates who happen to share a bed. I understand what everyone will suggest, and you're likely correct. But it's difficult to conclude a 5-year relationship ending over something that seems like it should be fixable. We're not arguing about finances, family, or infidelity. Our disagreement is about how we spend our evenings. It feels both so insignificant and so monumental simultaneously. Comment 1. Stop labeling this an argument about evenings. This is an argument concerning core values, lifestyle preferences, and what each of you requires to feel content in life. These are not minor matters. They are the bedrock of lasting compatibility. You've already provided your own answer by stating you're evolving into different individuals. Heed that intuition. Reply. You are entirely correct, and I believe I've been downplaying the importance of what's occurring because it's simpler than confronting the situation's reality. I've been reflecting extensively since that evening at the club, and I keep recalling this particular moment when I observed Mia dancing with her friends. She appeared so genuinely joyful and uninhibited in a manner I've realized I haven't witnessed when she's with me for months. That ought to have made me pleased for her, but instead, it left me profoundly sad because I grasped that I'm no longer the one who elicits that aspect of her, and the opposite holds true as well. Comment 2. Man, I've been tracking your posts, and I continually see myself reflected in your circumstance. I'm also weary of weekend social commitments, and my girlfriend and I experienced something comparable last year. The distinction is that we managed to establish a workable balance, but solely because we both truly desired the same fundamental thing, a committed relationship that allowed room for individual pursuits. It appears you and Mia now desire different fundamental things. Reply. I'm genuinely pleased you and your girlfriend managed to resolve it, and I'm intrigued by what that balance entails for you as well. I believe you've pinpointed the crucial distinction, however. You both sought the same fundamental thing. I've been attempting to discern what Mia and I each desire at the most profound level, beyond merely the superficial activities. I believe what I seek is a partnership where we can construct something jointly, be it a tranquil existence, mutual pastimes, profound discussions, or striving towards shared objectives. I wish to feel like we're a unit that's generating something significant. What I believe Mia now desires is a relationship that enriches her social life and grants her the liberty to discover the person she's evolving into. She desires a partner capable of matching her energy and her yearning for novel experiences. These aren't necessarily inconsistent in theory, but for us, in reality, they are. I cannot maintain her energy level without experiencing exhaustion, and she cannot reduce her pace to mine without feeling constrained. I continue to hope for some miraculous compromise we haven't yet considered, but I'm beginning to acknowledge that certain disparities cannot be negotiated away. Update 3. I believe we're at last confronting the reality that many of you have been subtly suggesting in your comments. 2 weeks ago, Mia returned home from a girls' night and requested we have a serious talk. She had me sit down and mentioned her friends had posed some difficult questions about our relationship, and now she was also questioning matters. Apparently, her friends had been posing some challenging inquiries regarding our relationship, and she was now also questioning aspects of it. Apparently, her friend Rachel had been especially blunt, informing Mia she was settling with someone who was unable to keep up with her energy and that she would regret dedicating her 20s to someone who caused her to feel guilty for desiring enjoyment. Rachel further mentioned that observing us together was agonizing because it was evident we no longer shared the same understanding. But it wasn't solely Rachel. Mia stated that numerous friends had remarked on how distinct she appeared in my absence, seemingly more lively and sociable. Someone had even suggested that I appeared to be dead weight when we socialized as a group. Listening to all of this was harsh, but I endeavored to concentrate on Mia's actual words, instead of becoming defensive regarding her friends' views. She informed me she'd been deep in thought, and she was beginning to question if we were genuinely compatible in the long run. "I love you," she expressed, "but I'm unsure if I'm in love with the life we are constructing together, and I don't know if you're in love with who I'm becoming either." She was right about that last part. We decided to take a week to consider things separately. I stayed at my friend David's place, and Mia had the apartment to herself. The plan was to meet up again the following weekend and decide what to do next. That week apart was remarkably revealing. I felt relieved. Not happy exactly, but like I could finally breathe. I didn't have to concern myself with making weekend plans or compromising on activities I didn't want to do. I could work late without feeling guilty, sleep in without being made to feel lazy, and spend Sunday reading without someone dramatically sighing in the background. When I spoke to David about it, he said something that remained with me. "You seem more like yourself than you have in months." That was difficult to hear, but I think it was true. Meanwhile, Mia apparently had the finest week she'd experienced in ages. She went out 3 times, had friends over twice, and generally lived the social life she desired without having to consider my preferences or energy levels. When we spoke on the phone midweek to check in, she sounded happier and more energetic than I'd heard her in months. When we met up last weekend to talk, we were both quite honest about how the week had progressed. Neither of us wanted to hurt the other, but we also couldn't pretend that we hadn't both been more content separately. "I think we've been striving so hard to make this function that we've lost sight of whether it should function," Mia stated. "Perhaps some individuals simply aren't destined to be together long term, even if they love each other. We haven't reached any definitive conclusions yet, but we're both now acknowledging that this might not be resolvable. We're going to attempt one more week of cohabiting and see if we can discover any way forward, but honestly, I believe we both know where this is headed. The most challenging aspect is that there's no antagonist in this narrative. Neither of us committed any wrongdoing. We simply evolved in divergent directions, and now we're attempting to ascertain if love is sufficient to bridge that divide. I'm beginning to suspect it might not be." Comment 1. The fact that you both experienced relief and happiness when separated reveals everything you need to understand. You don't need to await another week to resolve this. Sometimes the most compassionate action you can take is to release someone so they can find happiness with an individual who is genuinely enthusiastic about the same things they are. Reply. "You're correct, and I believe we both realize it. The week apart felt like a glimpse into what our lives could be if we weren't perpetually trying to compel a compatibility that no longer exists. What has been burdening me is the query of whether we are surrendering too readily. We've been together for 2.5 years, lived together for over a year, and we still love each other. Shouldn't that hold some significance? Shouldn't we be prepared to contend more vigorously for the relationship? But then I contemplate what contending more vigorously would genuinely entail. Final update. This will be my last update, and I wanted to express gratitude to everyone who followed along and provided counsel throughout this journey. We concluded things. After our week apart and the subsequent discussion I detailed in my previous post, we both understood our trajectory. We attempted the additional week we had planned, but it felt artificial and melancholic. We were both merely going through the motions of being a couple, knowing it wasn't effective. The conclusive conversation occurred last Sunday evening. We were seated on our sofa, endeavoring to watch a film together, and I could sense both of us mentally anticipating its conclusion. Finally, Mia paused it and asked, "This isn't working, is it?" We conversed for approximately 3 hours. It was candid, painful, and remarkably mature. We acknowledged that we had both transformed over the past year, and that these transformations had led us in divergent paths. We discussed all the methods we had employed to compromise, and how those compromises had left us both feeling as though we were acting rather than genuinely living. "I think we were attempting to love each other back to who we used to be," Mia remarked at one point, "instead of accepting who we are now." She was correct. The most difficult aspect of the conversation was recognizing all the positive elements we were relinquishing. We possess remarkable emotional closeness when we're not contending over lifestyle discrepancies. We bring laughter to each other. We share similar principles regarding honesty, faithfulness, and treating others kindly. We were truly best friends for the majority of our relationship. But we also recognized that those good things couldn't sustain a future if the daily reality of living together left us both feeling trapped and misunderstood. We agreed I'd move out at the end of the month. She's staying in the apartment, which makes sense as she loves the neighborhood's nightlife, and I'd been hoping to find a quieter spot anyway. We're going to spend some time separate to discover ourselves individually before attempting to maintain a friendship. Edit. I took my belongings out yesterday. It was unreal and sorrowful, but also peaceful in a way I hadn't expected. We exchanged a final hug, and Mia said, "I hope you find someone who loves staying home as much as you do." I told her I hoped she found someone who could keep pace with her energy. What's unusual is that I'm neither angry nor bitter. I'm sad, obviously, but I also feel like we managed this with the utmost maturity. We identified our incompatibility before it escalated to resentment. We concluded our relationship while we still wished for each other's happiness. We didn't try to compel a change or fault them for their nature. I'm residing with David for a few more days while I complete a lease on a new place. It's a tranquil apartment in a more settled area, with a good kitchen and room for a home office. For anyone who tracked this story from its start, you were right. This was always about core compatibility, not weekend plans. Sometimes two people can love each other and still not be a good fit for each other long term. It's still painful, but I'll probably be okay. Thank you for assisting me in seeing this situation clearly. I hope Mia and I both find partners who are enthusiastic about the same things we are, instead of merely tolerating them. Let's dive straight into the next disaster. I, 26M, have been with my girlfriend Ashley, 24F, for about 18 months. She's smart, funny, and independent, but she tends to overlook clear red flags and get herself into tricky situations. Then when problems arise, I'm expected to put everything aside and be her support system. Last weekend, Ashley heard about this party through her coworker, Louis. Louis's known for being a bit unreliable. He's the sort who always knows about the best parties, usually in warehouses or unfamiliar houses where nobody truly knows who's hosting. Ashley was excited because apparently there was going to be amazing music and interesting people. I immediately felt uneasy. The location was in a sketchy area of town I know from my job. I do HVAC service calls. The host was some guy Louis met at a bar. No mutual friends, no social media presence for the event, just word of mouth. I told Ashley I thought it seemed dangerous and that perhaps we should skip it or find another activity for the evening. Ashley got defensive and said I was being controlling and paranoid. She said she's an adult who can handle herself and doesn't need me monitoring her social life. I relented because I've learned that insisting only makes her more determined. I told her I wouldn't go, but she should do what she thought was best. She went with her friend Mika and 2 other friends. Around 1 a.m., I got a call from Mika saying Ashley had been drinking and a man at the party wouldn't stop bothering her. When she tried to leave, he followed her outside and grabbed her, attempting to force her to come back in with him. Mika and the others stepped in, but not before he'd roughed her up a bit, some bruising on her arms, and she hit her head when he pushed her against a wall. I immediately drove to collect them. Ashley was shaken but not seriously injured. We went to urgent care to ensure she didn't have a concussion, and she filed a police report the following day. The entire time, she kept saying how scared she was and how she never thought something like this could occur. Here's where I might be the asshole. I was supportive during the immediate crisis, but when she started talking about how traumatic it was and how she needed me to take time off work to be with her, I snapped. I told her I was glad she was okay, but I was drained from constantly worrying about her putting herself in dangerous situations and then expecting me to clean up the mess. I mentioned other incidents. The time she got food poisoning from that pop-up restaurant with no health permits that I'd cautioned her about. When she misplaced her wallet and phone after going to bars alone in an unfamiliar city during a work trip. The sketchy Craigslist roommate situation that turned into a nightmare. Every time I'd voiced concerns beforehand, and every time she'd dismissed them as me being overprotective. I told her that while what happened to her was absolutely not her fault, and the guy was 100% wrong, I couldn't continue being her emotional safety net when she consistently disregarded my concerns about clearly risky situations. I said I felt like she only valued my judgment after things went wrong. Ashley was hurt and angry. She said I was victim blaming and being unsympathetic precisely when she needed me most. She's been staying at Mika's since then and has been texting me about how cruel I'm being. Several mutual friends have contacted me saying I should apologize and that this isn't the moment to raise relationship issues. I feel terrible about the timing, but I also feel like I've reached my limit. I'm not saying she deserved what happened. Nobody deserves that. But I'm tired of feeling like I'm dating someone who treats me like a backup plan for when her poor decisions catch up with her. Am I the asshole for telling her I'm done with this pattern? Or should I have waited and just been supportive? Some people are asking about the other incidents I mentioned. The food poisoning was from an underground supper club that was just some random person cooking in their apartment and selling meals through Instagram. No business license, no health inspection, just someone Ashley found through a food blogger. I told her it seemed risky, but she said I was being bougie and that hole-in-the-wall places often have the best food. The wallet and phone incident occurred when she was in Portland for work. She chose to explore the nightlife on her own instead of joining her colleagues. She went bar hopping by herself and drank too much. Someone pickpocketed her at the last venue, leaving her stranded with no way to return to her hotel. She had to call me at 3 a.m. to help her determine how to get assistance. The roommate situation happened when her previous living arrangement didn't work out. She found someone on Craigslist who was renting a room for significantly below market rate. I suggested she meet them in person first and perhaps conduct some sort of background check, but she was in a rush and simply sent a deposit based on a few text exchanges. It turned out the person was illegally subletting and had serious mental health issues. Ashley had to move out after 2 weeks when the woman began having screaming matches with imaginary people at all hours. Comment 1. NTA. I was prepared to call you TA based on the title, but after reading the entire account, it sounds like you have a valid pattern of concern here. Being supportive doesn't mean you have to enable irresponsible behavior indefinitely. The timing isn't ideal, but when exactly would be the appropriate time to address this? That said, you might want to consider if this is simply incompatibility rather than her being incorrect. Some people are more risk-averse and others are more adventurous. Neither is inherently negative, but it can create issues in relationships. OP's reply, "You're right, that there's likely some basic incompatibility here. I don't believe I'm excessively careful. I take sensible chances constantly. I'll try out new restaurants, I'll attend concerts in unknown venues. I'll explore hiking trails I haven't used previously. But I conduct fundamental research first. I check reviews. I inform someone of my destination. I ensure I have a safe way to return home." Ashley appears to believe that performing any sort of risk assessment means you're not truly living or you're being overly anxious. She's mentioned to me previously that she enjoys the thrill of not knowing what will occur. I once thought that was somewhat charming, but it began to feel more like she's drawn to disorder. What truly bothers me is that she's not only endangering herself. When issues arise, it impacts everyone close to her. Mika had to depart the party early to assist her. I had to abandon everything and drive across town at 1 a.m. Her parents had to send her money when she misplaced her wallet. It's as if she believes living in the moment implies others will always be there to handle the repercussions. Comment 2. How precisely did you convey your concerns in advance? Were you truly providing her with facts and allowing her to make her own decision, ready to face the repercussions? Comment 2. How precisely did you convey your concerns in advance? Were you truly providing her with facts and allowing her to make her own decision, or were you being controlling and insisting she not go? OP's reply, "That's a fair question, and frankly it's likely varied by circumstance." Regarding the party, I said something along the lines of, "This sounds very dubious to me." Louis doesn't exactly possess the best judgment, and a gathering with no genuine host in that area of town appears to be an invitation for trouble. I don't have the best judgment, and a party with no proper host in that section of town seems like a formula for disaster. I don't think I want to attend, and I'm concerned about you going as well. She asked why I considered it dubious, and I explained about the location, the absence of specifics, and Louis's history. She said I was being paranoid, and that she was going irrespective of my opinion. So I suppose it varies by situation. I try to explain my rationale rather than simply saying, "Don't do it," but I'm probably more direct than I should be at times. The most frustrating aspect is that she seems to perceive any voiced concern as an effort to control her, even when I'm not trying to prevent her from doing anything. Comment 3, Esh. She's being irresponsible, but your timing is utterly dreadful. Someone just got assaulted, and your immediate reaction is to say, "I told you so." That's not being a supportive partner, even if you're feeling frustrated. You should have been supportive at that time and discussed the recurring issue later, when she was in a more composed state. Now you've likely harmed the relationship irrevocably, because she'll always recall that when she needed you most, you focused on your frustrations instead. OP's reply, "I can see why you think that, and the timing certainly wasn't perfect. However, I want to clarify, I did not say I told you so at that moment. I was fully supportive throughout the actual crisis. I drove to pick her up right away, took her to urgent care, remained with her during the police report, and ensured she felt secure. It was only the following day when she began discussing me taking time off work and reordering my entire schedule to become her full-time support person that I mentioned the pattern. And even at that point, I said nothing about this particular incident being foreseeable. I was attempting to explain why I felt emotionally depleted and couldn't offer the degree of support she anticipated. Perhaps I should have waited longer, but frankly, when would have been the appropriate time? This discussion has been developing for months. I'm not attempting to make her feel worse about what occurred to her, but I also cannot pretend that this appeared out of nowhere when I've been voicing worries about precisely these types of situations throughout our whole relationship. Comment 4. NTA. And frankly, all these individuals stating you are the asshole and should have waited are misunderstanding the point. When precisely is the proper time to have this discussion? She disregards your worries beforehand, and seemingly you're not permitted to address the pattern afterward either. That's not viable. I've experienced a similar relationship, and it's draining. You wind up feeling like a parent instead of a partner. Good for you for establishing boundaries. Ops reply, I've been feeling that way for some time, but couldn't quite articulate it. It feels as though I'm expected to be concerned for her safety and present to resolve issues when they go wrong, but I'm not permitted to offer any input on the choices that lead to these circumstances initially. What's most frustrating is that she's genuinely very intelligent and competent in other areas of her life. She excels at her job. She manages money well. She's a loyal girlfriend. Yet regarding personal safety, it's as if she possesses a total blind spot. And subsequently, when I highlight potential dangers, she behaves as though I'm treating her as a child. Yet when matters worsen, she anticipates I'll handle everything. Thus, the replies to my initial post were rather divided. However, many individuals requested further context about the pattern I referred to. I've been reflecting on it extensively, and I've come to understand there are actually more occurrences than I first recalled. Ashley stopped by yesterday to retrieve some items she'd left at my residence. She's still residing at Mika's, and mentioned she required space to process the incident. I had hoped we could engage in a calm discussion, but she instantly began expressing how wounded she feels, that I'm not providing sufficient support. She stated she's been speaking with her friends and family regarding the situation, and everyone believes I'm acting cruelly and insensitively. Her mother even telephoned me yesterday inquiring why I wasn't looking after Ashley during this challenging period. I attempted to clarify that I had offered support during the actual crisis, but that I was contending with a larger pattern. Ashley's mother mentioned that this isn't the moment for relationship problems, and that I should be concentrating on assisting Ashley in her recovery. I understand that, but I'm frankly feeling quite exhausted. This isn't solely concerning the party. Allow me to provide the complete overview. Incident 1, approximately a year back, Ashley opted to attempt a raw water cleanse she discovered online. This entailed consuming solely untreated spring water for 7 days to recalibrate her system. I researched it and presented her with articles detailing the health hazards, but she claimed I was being narrow-minded and that Western medicine fails to comprehend natural healing. She ultimately developed severe stomach problems and needed to visit the emergency room due to dehydration. Incident 2, 8 months ago, which I brought up in my initial post comments, the Craigslist flatmate situation I previously referred to. The individual proved to have significant mental health concerns and was additionally subletting the dwelling unlawfully. Ashley was forced to relocate abruptly and consequently resided with me for 3 weeks until she located another place, which created tension in my association with my own flatmate. Incident 3, 6 months back, the dubious pop-up eatery that caused her food poisoning. She was unwell for 4 days and missed a crucial presentation at her job. Incident 4, 4 months prior, during her business journey to Portland, she chose to investigate the nightlife by herself instead of remaining indoors with her coworkers. She frequented various bars unaccompanied, consumed an excessive amount of alcohol, and her phone and wallet were stolen by a pickpocket. She telephoned me in a panic at 3 a.m., and I had to dedicate my morning to helping her cancel cards, contact her hotel, and organize her journey home. Incident 5, the party last weekend. When I presented all of this to Ashley yesterday, she became quite defensive. She claimed I was keeping a tally and that it was unjust to mention past situations that had already been settled. She stated that unfortunate events occur to everyone at times, and it doesn't imply she's careless. However, the truth is, in each and every one of these situations, I had voiced worries in advance and been informed I was being overly protective. anxious, or domineering. And in each instance, when matters went awry, I was anticipated to abandon everything and assist in rectifying the predicament. Ashley also stated that the assault was entirely distinct from the other incidents because it was an act of violence and not merely misfortune. She's correct that what occurred to her was grave and distressing, and I feel terrible about it. But the conditions that resulted in her being in that predicament, attending a dubious party without genuine scrutiny, matched the identical pattern as everything else. I attempted to clarify that I wasn't holding her accountable for being assaulted, but that I was worn out from continually fretting about her safety, and then being anticipated to provide the remedy when my worries proved to be warranted. She stated, "That's what partners are meant to do for one another." Perhaps she's correct, but I don't believe it is reciprocated. When I informed her I was feeling swamped and also required some emotional backing, she said I was centering her trauma around myself. When I proposed she consider why these situations persistently occur, she said I was victim blaming. I'm beginning to question if we just have basically distinct life philosophies. She seems to think that exercising caution implies you're not truly experiencing life, while I think that adopting fundamental safeguards is simply part of being an adult. Neither perspective is inherently incorrect, but they may not be compatible. I am unsure what to do moving forward. A portion of me believes I ought to simply apologize and endeavor to be more supportive, but yet another part of me senses that would merely restart the pattern. Has anyone else encountered a similar situation? Edit. Many individuals are inquiring why I did not incorporate some of these specifics in my original post. Frankly, I was attempting to keep it centered on the recent occurrence and did not grasp how crucial the complete pattern was for background. Also, some of these circumstances were quite humiliating for Ashley, and I did not wish to unnecessarily disclose all her personal matters. But considering the number of people who requested illustrations, I concluded the background was pertinent. I furthermore wish to clarify that I do not believe Ashley is an ill-natured individual, or that she merits unfortunate events befalling her. She is kind, intelligent, and possesses many excellent attributes. This problem with risk evaluation appears to be her sole significant blind spot, yet it's a substantial one that impacts our relationship. Update 2. I discovered some days past that Ashley hadn't been entirely truthful about how the party incident happened. I encountered one of her friends close to my workplace. Celia inquired about Ashley's well-being after the incident at that party, and when I mentioned I was pleased her friends had been present to assist, Celia appeared perplexed. She explained that she, Mika, and their other friend Jess had collectively opted not to attend the party because it appeared extremely dubious. As Purcell, she, Mika, and their other friend, Jess, had collectively chosen not to attend the party because it struck them as utterly questionable. Celia stated they were meant to attend jointly, but earlier in the night, all three of them had reservations. Celia mentioned that the more they discussed it, the more warning signs they observed. So they chose to withdraw and visit a conventional bar instead, and presumed Ashley would accompany them. But Ashley genuinely wished to attend that particular party and opted to go by herself. She informed them she would join them subsequently, but never materialized. Celia mentioned they were concerned for her, but assumed she was enjoying herself and would make contact the following day. Consequently, when Mika contacted me to collect them, it was not due to them all being present at the party collectively. Ashley had contacted Mika following the event, and Mika proceeded to retrieve her. So Ashley was basically at this sketchy party by herself, surrounded by people she didn't know, with no real safety net. I confronted Ashley about this yesterday, and she admitted it was true, but said she didn't think the details mattered. She said she knew I'd be even angrier if I found out she'd gone alone, so she let me assume her friends had been there the whole time. I'm honestly floored by this. It's one thing to ignore my concerns and go to a questionable party with friends. It's another thing entirely to go alone after her own friends decided it was too risky, and then to lie about it afterward, while accusing me of not being supportive enough. Ashley said she lied because she knew I'd use it as ammunition against her, and that she was already dealing with enough without me making her feel worse about her choices. She said she was trying to protect herself from my judgment, but this changes everything for me. I've been questioning whether I was being too harsh about the pattern of risky behavior, but now I'm realizing that the situation was even worse than I thought. She didn't just ignore my warnings, she ignored her friends' warnings too. And when everyone in her life was saying something seemed off, she decided to go anyway. I asked her why she was so set on going to this specific party, and she said she didn't want to miss out on something that could be enjoyable just because other people were being overly cautious. She said she's weary of everyone acting like she is unable to make her own choices. The issue is, I don't believe she's incapable of making decisions. I think she repeatedly makes poor ones when it comes to her own well-being, and then expects others to handle the fallout. I still feel awful about what happened to her, and I don't think she deserved to be assaulted irrespective of her decisions. But I'm starting to think this relationship could be irreparable. I can't be with someone who lies to me about significant matters, and then becomes upset when I express concerns based on partial details. Has anyone else experienced a partner who seems to pursue dangerous scenarios and then misrepresents the facts when issues arise? Final update. It's over. Ashley and I ended things yesterday, and while I'm unhappy about it, I think it was the correct choice for both of us. After learning about the dishonesty concerning the party, I devoted considerable thought to what I genuinely desired from this relationship, and whether it was something that could truly materialize with Ashley. I understood that I wasn't only bothered about the hazardous conduct, I was disturbed by the untruthfulness, and the way she seemed to think I should provide boundless backing without me being permitted to voice any worries. I visited Mika's apartment yesterday to speak with Ashley. I informed her that I'd been reflecting on everything that had occurred, and that I didn't believe we were compatible in the long run. I clarified that I couldn't be in a relationship where my worries were regularly brushed aside as controlling or overly anxious, particularly when those worries repeatedly proved to be valid. Ashley became distressed and stated I was deserting her when she required me most. She mentioned that the assault was a distressing experience, and that ending our relationship now would make her feel as though I held her responsible for what occurred. I attempted to clarify that my choice wasn't about the assault itself, but rather about the pattern of conduct and deceit that had been accumulating for months. I stated I needed to be with someone who would at least weigh my concerns instead of automatically disregarding them, and she needed to be with someone who wouldn't fret so much about her decisions. Ashley claimed I was being self-centered, and that if I genuinely cared about her, I'd stand by her during a challenging period. She charged me with using the falsehoods as a pretext to end our relationship because I was weary of handling her difficulties. That's not completely inaccurate, to be frank. I am weary of managing one crisis after another that could have been prevented with fundamental safeguards. Mika was present for the majority of this discussion, and she ultimately uttered something that truly resonated with me. She said that she loved Ashley like a sister, but that she'd also been growing weary of the continuous drama. She mentioned that Ashley's friends had begun refusing invitations to go out with her because they never knew what sort of situation they'd find themselves in. Her own friends were beginning to pull away because of her decisions. That indicated to me that the issue wasn't solely my anxiety or controlling disposition. Ashley inquired if there was anything she could do to alter my perspective, and I told her truthfully that I'd need to observe steady changes in how she handled decision-making and communication. I said I'd need her to admit that some of her decisions had been objectively hazardous, and that she'd need to cease lying about the conditions when things went awry. She stated she shouldn't have to alter who she is for a relationship, and I concurred with her. I told her she should seek someone who values her impulsiveness and doesn't fret about the dangers the way I do, and I should seek someone who aligns with my approach to safety and truthful communication. We concluded things amicably, though Ashley was clearly hurt and angry. I assisted her in packing up the remainder of her belongings from my apartment, and we agreed that we'd likely need some time before we could be friends. I feel sorrowful about the breakup, and a few individuals have messaged me inquiring if I feel remorseful about the timing, considering she was recently assaulted. I do feel bad about that, but I also believe there's never an ideal time to end a relationship, and this problem had been accumulating throughout our entire relationship. Delaying wouldn't have altered the core incompatibility. I want to state clearly that I don't consider Ashley a bad person, and I don't believe she deserved anything negative to occur to her. I hope she discovers someone who values her adventurous spirit and doesn't fret the way I do. But I also hope she ultimately learns to be more truthful about her decisions and their outcomes. Edit. Some individuals are inquiring about the assault investigation. Ashley did file a police report, and to my knowledge, they're still investigating it. I provided a statement about what I was aware of, essentially just the phone call and picking her up. But I don't possess any further details about the case. I hope they apprehend the individual and that he faces repercussions for his actions. Time for another story you won't believe. My wife, 32F, and I, 34M, have been married for 6 years. I work full-time, and my wife has been a stay-at-home wife by choice since we got married. Last Tuesday morning, I woke up and she was gone. No note, no text, nothing. Her car was missing, and when I checked, she'd taken a suitcase worth of clothes. I figured maybe she went to visit her mom or something and would call later, but by evening, I was worried sick. Wednesday came and went with no word. I called her mom, her sister, her friends, even her work friends from her old job. Nobody had heard from her. Thursday, I was panicking and called hospitals. Friday morning, I filed a missing person report. The police were less than helpful. They basically told me that since she'd taken her belongings and car voluntarily, she probably just left on her own. They said unless there were signs of foul play, adults have the right to disappear. I kept insisting something was wrong, because this wasn't like her at all. Saturday afternoon, I was driving around neighborhoods, looking for her car, when I spotted it in the driveway of her friend Claudia's house. I knocked on the door, and Claudia answered, looking super uncomfortable. When I asked if my wife was there, she hesitated, then my wife appeared behind her. I was so relieved I almost cried right there on the doorstep. I asked what the hell was going on, why she hadn't called, if she was okay. She looked angry. That perplexed me because I was the one who'd been frantic with worry for 4 days. She said we had to talk and came home with me. That's when she clarified this was entirely deliberate. She said she had to demonstrate what life would be like without her and force me to value all her efforts in our home. I was stunned. I asked her why she couldn't have simply spoken with me if she felt undervalued. She said she'd attempted, but I'd never listen, and this was the only way to reach me. She said she wanted me to grasp the extent of her labor and how I underappreciate it. The truth is, I do appreciate what she does. Yes, she manages most household tasks, but I work 50-plus hours a week to provide for both of us. I thought that was our understanding. When I get home, I typically do dishes or some laundry if she asks. I've never grumbled about her not working or caused her to feel poorly for it. I'm attempting to comprehend her viewpoint, but causing me to believe she was dead or abducted for 4 days appears excessive. The missing person report is humiliating. I'll need to call and confirm she's well, or that her disappearance for 4 days felt extreme. The missing person report is humiliating. I'll have to call and state she's fine. I skipped 3 days of work. I hardly slept. She says if I devoted as much effort to our household as I do into fretting over her vanishing, we wouldn't face this issue. But I am unsure what else she expects from me. I'm not a messy person. I tidy up my own messes. I handle yard work and home repairs. Am I overlooking something here? Is this customary? I love my wife, but I'm struggling to move past the fact that she allowed me to agonize for days, believing something dreadful had befallen her, simply to make a point about household duties. Comment 1. This is emotional abuse. Full stop. Making someone think you're dead to prove a point about housework is manipulative and cruel. The fact that she planned this out and observed your suffering demonstrates a troubling absence of empathy. You need to seriously reevaluate this relationship. What comes next? Fabricated pregnancy scares for attention? OP's reply, I value the insight, though I'm not prepared to label it abuse just yet. I believe she genuinely felt disregarded and perhaps didn't fully consider how this would impact me. She isn't typically manipulative. This was entirely uncharacteristic of her, which is partly why I'm so bewildered. Comment 2. Buddy, I regret to inform you, but this suggests she's been conversing with some unhealthy individuals who planted this notion in her mind. Normal people don't just arbitrarily choose to psychologically torment their partners. Someone persuaded her this was a sound idea. You need to discover who and what other counsel they've been providing her. OP's reply, you might be onto something there. Now that I reflect on it, she has been spending considerably more time with Claudia and her circle of friends lately. Claudia got divorced approximately a year ago and has been quite resentful about it. There's also Janice, who experienced a messy divorce 2 years ago, and Rumi, who is currently separated. My wife began spending time with them more consistently about 6 months ago. Initially, I was glad she was forming friendships and venturing out of the house more. However, I have observed she's been more critical of me recently, mentioning matters that never troubled her previously. Small remarks about how I load the dishwasher or how I fold laundry. When I inquired whose idea this vanishing act was, she became defensive and stated it was her choice. Yet the manner in which she phrased some things when explaining it, it seemed as though she was reiterating talking points instead of articulating her own feelings, particularly the segment about making me value what life would be like without her. That doesn't appear like something my wife would typically utter. Claudia was certainly uneasy when I appeared at her door, and when my wife returned home with me, Claudia had this expression as if she wished to speak, but refrained. I'm curious if she recognized this was a poor idea, but proceeded with it regardless. It's vexing because I cannot precisely demand she cease being friends with these women, but if they're fostering this sort of conduct, it's an issue. I simply don't know how to confront it without seeming controlling. Comment 3. What precisely does she do around the house? You noted she manages most of the housework, but what does that truly entail? Are we talking basic cleaning, or is she doing everything while you do the absolute least? OP's reply. Fair question, and I've been giving this much thought since it occurred. Here's the breakdown as candidly as I can provide it. She handles the majority of daily cleaning, vacuuming, dusting, bathroom cleaning, making the bed. She does most of the laundry, though I'll start a load if she requests, or if I need something specific cleaned. She manages grocery shopping and meal planning, cooking dinner most evenings. She oversees our social calendar and remembers birthdays, anniversaries, those sorts of occasions. I manage all outdoor tasks, mowing, landscaping, snow removal, maintaining our pool. I handle all home repairs and upkeep, car maintenance, and manage our finances and investments. I typically do the dishes after dinner and tidy the kitchen. I take out the trash and recycling. When she deep cleans, I assist with heavy lifting and moving furniture. On weekends, I usually tackle a larger cleaning project, cleaning the garage, organizing the basement, washing the cars, that kind of work. If she asks me to do something particular, I do it. I don't believe I've ever declined to help with housework. The reality is, our house isn't enormous, and it's just the two of us. Yes, she performs more of the daily upkeep, but I'm working over 50 hours a week. When I arrive home, I'm weary, but I still help with dinner cleanup and fulfill her requests. I believe that was fair. Perhaps I am mistaken, however. Perhaps she feels she's doing more than her share. But instead of discussing it with me, she opted to vanish for 4 days. That's what I cannot comprehend. If she had stated, "I need you to contribute more around the house," I would have paid attention. We could have devised a more effective system. I'm beginning to suspect this wasn't truly about housework at all. Perhaps that was merely the pretext. Update. Thanks to everyone who commented. I wasn't anticipating this to gain such traction, but reviewing your replies helped me recognize this situation was more grave than I initially believed. Following my initial post, I resolved to have a genuine conversation with my wife about what transpired. I waited a few days for both of us to calm down, then sat her down and explained how her vanishing act impacted me. She was more open than I anticipated. She actually apologized and admitted she hadn't considered it from my viewpoint. That's when I directly asked if her friends had proposed this plan. Initially, she attempted to evade, but eventually she confessed. It was Claudia's suggestion, supported by Janice and Rumi. They termed it a power move that would make me realize how much I rely on her. Apparently, they had been leading up to this for months. They persuaded her that I was exploiting her, that she was essentially my unpaid maid and cook. They informed her that her role as a stay-at-home wife was 1950s nonsense, and that I was likely cheating on her while she squandered her life doing my laundry. The cheating accusation struck me hard because it's entirely untrue. I asked her if she truly believed that, and she said no. But her friends had sown enough doubt that she began to wonder. They told her that all men cheat, especially when their wives are present at home rather than being independent. They evidently spent weeks arranging this. Claudia offered her a place to stay. Janice instructed her on what to pack to make it appear as though she'd left willingly. Rumi told her to switch off her phone so I couldn't trace her whereabouts. They even had a group conversation about it, mapping out the timeline and talking about my probable responses. The aspect that truly bothered me was when she confessed they were all keen to see how I'd react, as if this were amusement for them. They wanted to see if I'd just dismiss it, showing I didn't care, or panic, demonstrating I couldn't manage without her. In either scenario, they'd have leverage to use against me. I asked her how she felt about being treated as a mere pawn in their schemes, and that appeared to resonate. She became silent and said she hadn't considered it like that. She said they made it seem like they were prioritizing her well-being. However, this is where it worsens. When I asked if she was going to sever ties with them, she paused. She said they were her friends and she couldn't just throw away those relationships. She said she'd talked to them about how this went too far, but she wasn't willing to stop being friends with them. I told her that was a problem for me. These women persuaded her to psychologically torment me for 4 days as a kind of test. They're clearly toxic and seem to want our marriage to fail. If she's not willing to distance herself from people who actively sabotage our relationship, then we have a more significant issue. She became defensive and claimed I was trying to control who she could be friends with. She stated that simply because their advice was bad this time didn't mean they were bad people. She asserted they were simply looking out for her because they'd all been through divorces and didn't want her to end up in a bad situation. I indicated that perhaps 3 divorced women weren't the best people to get marriage advice from, and that truly angered her. She claimed I was being judgmental, and that her friends' relationships failing didn't invalidate their perspectives. We debated in circles for hours. She continued to insist she could maintain the friendships, while ignoring their bad advice. But I don't see how that's possible. These women actively dislike me and want her to leave me. They're not going to stop trying to poison her against me simply because this particular scheme backfired. The breaking point came when she claimed I was overreacting and ought to move past it, since she was home safely and had apologized. She stated that harboring resentment would merely confirm her friends were correct about me being controlling and irrational. I then understood that she still doesn't completely grasp what she did or why it was wrong. She regrets I was hurt, but she doesn't regret doing it. To her way of thinking, my reaction is the issue, not her actions. I packed a bag and left to stay at my brother's house. I informed her I required room to think, and that until she was ready to sever connections with the individuals who persuaded her to torment me, I couldn't rely on her judgment. She wept and pleaded with me to remain, but I departed regardless. I've been here for 3 days now. She's been messaging incessantly, switching between apologies and charges that I'm deserting our marriage because of a single error. She claims her friends are informing her this confirms they were right about me not genuinely loving her. My brother and his wife have been wonderful. They're allowing me to stay for as long as I require and have served as excellent sounding boards. My sister-in-law, in particular, has been supportive. She mentioned if her friends ever persuaded her to do something similar to my brother, she'd cut them off at once because true friends don't urge you to harm the people you care for. I'm uncertain what will happen next. I care for my wife, but I'm beginning to believe love isn't sufficient if she's going to permit other individuals to manipulate her into harming me. I never thought I'd be contemplating divorce, yet here I am. Your wife is revealing her true self. She coordinated emotional torment against you with her friends, and when faced, she's more focused on preserving those friendships than mending the harm to your marriage. The fact that she's now employing their approval to vindicate her actions demonstrates she won't alter her ways. This is what prevents me from sleeping. The woman I married would never have acted in such a manner. But maybe I didn't understand her as thoroughly as I believed. What troubles me most is the speed at which she was swayed by these women. We've been together for 8 years, married for 6. In that time, I thought we'd established trust and open dialogue. But it took her new friends just a few months to persuade her I was some sort of antagonist exploiting her. The group chat thing truly affects me, knowing they were all sitting around planning how to manipulate my thoughts, analyzing my responses as if I were a test subject. And my wife was directly involved in it. She helped plan something intended to inflict the greatest emotional anguish upon me. When she tells me her friends are saying my leaving validates their claims, it shows she's still more focused on their affirmation than on our marriage. She's not assessing their counsel critically, she's simply internalizing whatever they communicate and accepting it as fact. I frequently recall what my sister-in-law said. Real friends don't encourage you to hurt people you love. These women don't desire my wife to be content in her marriage. They wish for her to be as unhappy and divorced as they are. And the reality that she cannot perceive that, or chooses not to, reveals everything I need to understand about where her priorities rest. Comment 2. Have you considered marriage counseling? It appears your wife has been love-bombed by these detrimental friends and may require expert assistance to identify the manipulation. Some individuals are simply more vulnerable to this type of sway, particularly if they're alone or unsure of themselves. Op reply. I actually raised the idea of counseling during one of our discussions, and her answer was revealing. She stated she didn't wish to attend therapy because therapists would simply favor my perspective, since I'm the one covering the cost. When I noted that's not how therapy operates, she mentioned her friends informed her that couples counselors are prejudiced towards preserving marriages even when they ought to conclude. This is exactly what I'm talking about. These women possess a reply for every situation, and they've persuaded her that any external viewpoint that doesn't correspond with theirs is questionable. They've established this isolated echo chamber where solely their viewpoints hold significance. You're correct that she might be more vulnerable to this sort of manipulation. She's always been someone who seeks to please others and desires to be well regarded. When she ceased employment, she lost many of her social ties and likely felt alone. These women appeared and made her feel special, as though she belonged to a sisterhood. The love-bombing element is precise. They lavish her with attention and affirmation, but only when she's grumbling about me or our marriage. When she expresses favorable sentiments about our relationship, they alter the topic or discover methods to distort it into something unfavorable. I'm not against counseling, but I don't believe she'd engage sincerely at this moment. She'd enter with the preconceived notion that the therapist is prejudiced and utilize that to disregard anything that disputes her friend's account. For counseling to be effective, both individuals must be receptive to the chance that they are mistaken about something. Currently, she's persuaded that I'm the issue, and her friends are the answer. Until that shifts, I don't perceive how therapy could be beneficial. Update 2. I believed this situation couldn't deteriorate further. I was mistaken. My sister-in-law approached me yesterday with something she had discovered online. She was reluctant to show me, but stated I had to be aware. She had been investigating on social media after I informed her about my wife's friends, attempting to gain a clearer understanding of who these women were. She located Claudia's TikTok profile. A video was uploaded 5 days ago, immediately after I departed to stay at my brother's residence. The video was shot in what appeared to be my living room, depicting me experiencing a total collapse on Friday morning before I lodged the missing persons report. I was on the phone with the police, weeping, describing my wife and pleading with them to assist me in locating her. The camera captured me at my most vulnerable moment. It had more than 40,000 views and hundreds of comments ridiculing me, people calling me pathetic, claiming I deserved it, joking about how I was likely useless without someone to cook and clean for me. Some remarks were even worse, with women stating they wanted to attempt this with their own husbands, asking for tips on how to pull it off. The most terrible part? There were several cameras. Claudia had uploaded a subsequent video displaying various angles of the same breakdown, along with footage of me frantically searching the house and phoning hospitals. They had transformed my true terror into amusement for strangers on the internet. I was trembling when my sister-in-law showed me. The privacy breach was awful enough, but realizing these women were joyfully filming my lowest moments, while my wife was hiding out at Claudia's house. I cannot even convey how that felt. My sister-in-law helped me screenshot everything before reporting the videos. The cameras were likely still in my house, small wireless ones hidden in picture frames and decorative objects. They had been filming me for who knows how long. I drove back to the house to face my wife. When I presented her with the screenshots and the concealed cameras, she turned pale. She kept repeating, I didn't know, repeatedly. She asserted she had no notion they were filming me, and certainly didn't know they had uploaded anything online. I wished to believe her, but the cameras had been positioned there for weeks. There was no way she didn't spot them setting this up. When I questioned her on it, she admitted she knew about some cameras, but thought they were just for security. She mentioned Claudia told her they were worried about me becoming violent when I found out about the plan. That made me furious. Not only had they filmed my breakdown, they'd also portrayed me as potentially dangerous to justify their surveillance. They were covering all their bases, ensuring they had evidence of my reaction no matter what I did. My wife broke down when she understood the full scope of what her friends had done. She stated she felt sick and betrayed. She phoned Claudia immediately and started screaming at her about the videos. From what I could overhear, Claudia was laughing and telling her to lighten up because it was just for fun. That's when my wife finally lost it. She informed Claudia she was a sick, twisted person and that she never wanted to see her again. She hung up and immediately blocked all 3 women on all platforms, but the harm was done. Those videos were out there, being shared and discussed by thousands of strangers. Even though they were removed after reports, people had already downloaded and reposted them. My humiliation was lasting. We spent hours conversing that night. My wife was appalled by what she'd participated in, even unknowingly. She kept apologizing and stating she felt manipulated and used. She understood her friends had not been attempting to help her. They had been exploiting our marriage as content for their social media drama. She implored me to come home and attempt to resolve matters. She vowed she was finished with those toxic people and desired to restore our trust. She proposed going to marriage counseling, individual therapy, whatever was necessary. I informed her I needed time to digest everything. The camera footage indicated they had been infringing upon our privacy for weeks, or perhaps months. She also departed and has been residing at her mom's house for emotional support since then, allowing me room to think. Her mom phoned me yesterday to express regret for her daughter's actions and said she was horrified when she heard what happened. Evidently, my wife has been crying incessantly and truly appears to grasp how badly she erred. Part of me desires to trust this wake-up call will resolve matters. She did sever ties with the toxic friends when she realized the extent of their actions. She appears to be genuinely remorseful now that she comprehends the entire extent of their manipulation. But another part of me cannot overlook what happened. Those videos will likely haunt me forever. My lowest point is now amusement for strangers who find my suffering amusing, and it happened because my wife placed her faith in individuals who hated me more than she trusted her own husband. I love her, but I am uncertain if affection suffices to overcome this level of betrayal. Even if she was manipulated, she still opted to take part. She still allowed them to place cameras in our home. She still vanished for 4 days while they recorded my breakdown. My brother believes I should flee and never look back. My sister-in-law thinks individuals can change if they genuinely desire to. I honestly no longer know what to think. Comment 1. Those cameras indicate this was premeditated and lasted much longer than just the vanishing act. They were assembling evidence against you for weeks or months, likely intending to use the footage in divorce proceedings or for more social media content. Your wife must have known. This degree of violation is not something you inadvertently take part in. Op reply, you're absolutely correct about the premeditation, and it's something that's been troubling me since I discovered the cameras. We're not discussing 1 or 2 devices hastily concealed before she departed. These were professionally positioned in multiple rooms, camouflaged as household objects, angled for optimal views. That requires planning and numerous visits to install. Comment 2. Your wife blocking them now is too little, too late. She only ceased contact after being caught in something she could neither deny nor justify. If those videos hadn't been uncovered, she'd probably still be friends with them and plotting the next power play. Don't let her portray herself as the victim here. She was a willing participant until the repercussions became too real. Op reply, this is precisely what I keep reflecting on. The timing of her change of heart is too convenient to disregard. She didn't experience a moral awakening. Instead, she had an, oh crap, I'm caught moment. When I initially departed for my brother's house, she was still defending these women and asserting she could keep the friendships while disregarding their poor advice. She was more bothered by my overreaction than by what she had actually done. It was only when she perceived herself as involved in something publicly shaming that she abruptly grasped how wrong it was. I've pondered what would have occurred if my sister-in-law hadn't discovered those videos. Would my wife have eventually seen reason independently? Would she have informed me about the cameras? Or would she have maintained that secret while her friends devised their next move? The evidence indicates she would have persisted on this course. She was already advocating for them after I left. She was already integrating their arguments into our discussions. Her severing ties now feels like an immediate response rather than thoughtful consideration. She's not blocking them because she finally comprehends their toxicity. She's blocking them because they caused her problems. There's a significant distinction between I realize my friends are detrimental to my marriage and I realize my friends publicly embarrassed me. I also cannot overlook that she's been misrepresenting her degree of participation throughout this entire period. First, she asserted it was entirely her concept. Then she confessed they proposed it. Then she acknowledged they planned it jointly. And now I discover they've been recording me for weeks. Each disclosure has been worse than the previous, and I'm not convinced I possess the complete truth even now. If someone only acts correctly when they are caught doing wrong, what does that indicate about their character? Comment 3. Document everything you can about those cameras and videos. before contemplating any reconciliation. This could be pertinent for divorce proceedings if it reaches that point, and you need to safeguard yourself legally. Also, consider pursuing charges. What they did was almost certainly unlawful. Op replied, "You're absolutely right. And it's something I should have considered immediately, but was too emotionally distraught to think about. I've been so fixated on the personal betrayal that I haven't fully processed the legal ramifications of what occurred. I contacted an attorney yesterday after reading your comment, and several others like it. It turns out what they did violates multiple laws, including wiretapping statutes, privacy laws, and potentially revenge porn laws, depending on what else they recorded. The fact that they publicly posted the videos exacerbates it from a legal perspective. The lawyer advised me to preserve all evidence, screenshots of the videos before their removal, photos of the camera placements, and documentation of their installation dates. My sister-in-law had the foresight to save everything she discovered, which is incredibly useful. I'm also finding that other people downloaded and saved the videos before TikTok removed them. The lawyer stated this could be pertinent for damages if we pursue civil action. Evidently, the fact that my humiliation was monetized, TikTok compensates creators for viral content, introduces an additional aspect to the case. The criminal side is complicated because it involves multiple jurisdictions, and the cameras were technically placed with my wife's permission in her own home. However, the lawyer believes there's clearly a case for invasion of privacy and potentially conspiracy charges, given the coordinated nature of the plan. I'm documenting everything at present and keeping my options open. Whether I pursue criminal charges or a civil lawsuit will depend partly on what happens with my marriage and partly on whether these women face any natural repercussions for their behavior. Final update. This is truly my final update. I'm filing for divorce. After my last post, I chose to give my wife one final opportunity to be completely honest about everything that occurred. I informed her I required the full truth. No more falsehoods. No more "I didn't know" excuses. If we were to have any hope of rebuilding, I needed to comprehend precisely what she'd done and when. She consented to tell me everything, and what I discovered made my decision simple. The cameras weren't merely installed 6 weeks before she vanished. They'd been present for 4 months. She assisted Claudia and the others in planning their locations. My wife confessed she was aware of all of it. She stated she participated because her friends persuaded her. I was likely concealing things from her regardless, so this was simply leveling the playing field. When I inquired why she was revealing all this to me now, she responded that she hoped complete honesty would demonstrate she was serious about changing. This was not a mistake, or a poor judgment, or even toxic friends leading her astray. This was a months-long conspiracy to psychologically torment me and ruin our marriage, with my wife as a willing and active participant. The woman I married wouldn't have done this, but maybe the woman I married never really existed. I consulted with a divorce attorney yesterday. Given the evidence we have, he is confident we can get everything settled swiftly and advantageously. My wife's actions amount to marital misconduct in our state, which impacts property division and spousal support. We are also proceeding with criminal charges against Claudia and the others. The DA has an interest in the case because of the social media component and the possibility of this prompting copycat behavior. My wife will not be charged as she is cooperating fully with the investigation. I have moved out of our house permanently. We did not have a prenup, so it's a 50-50 split. I also cannot bear to be in a place where I was recorded and violated for months. My brother is helping me find an apartment, and work has shown understanding about everything. My wife is devastated, but I am done feeling sorry for her. She made her choices every day for 4 months. Some people have asked if I think she can change, or if I am giving up too easily. Here is what I know. Someone who can spend months planning to psychologically torment their spouse is not the person I wish to be married to. Even if she could change, I will never be able to trust her again. How do you recover from something like this? I'm concentrating on progressing now. The legal matters will resolve themselves. To everyone who supported me through this, thank you. Your comments helped me grasp the situation clearly when I was too close to comprehend its true severity. Now let's move on to the last story. I know this will likely make me seem like a controlling boyfriend, yet I'm truly unsure if I'm being fair or if envy is clouding my perception. I've been with my girlfriend, Julie, for roughly 8 months now, and mostly our relationship has been quite strong. We moved in together roughly 8 months ago, and mostly our relationship has been quite strong. We moved in together around 3 months back, which seemed a natural next step since we were already spending most evenings together. For some background on us, I'm 28, employed at a mid-sized consulting firm, and Julie is 26. She also has a job. We met via mutual friends at a house party last year, connected instantly, and began dating quite soon afterward. Julie is outgoing, amusing, and typically quite open concerning her life and friendships, which is partly why this circumstance feels so strange to me. The problem began approximately 6 weeks after we moved in. Julie has always been social and keeps up friendships with many people from various stages of her life. College friends, work friends, individuals from her hometown, and so forth. I've encountered most of them at different gatherings or during informal get-togethers at our home. She's always been direct regarding her friendships, including a few male friends, and I've never had any problems with any of them. I'm not inherently a jealous person. I trust Julie. However, then there's Randy. According to Julie, Randy is her gay best friend from college who resides approximately 2 hours away in a different city. She speaks of him now and then, brings up amusing things he's uttered, alludes to their shared inside jokes, that sort of thing. The way she portrays their friendship, they were exceptionally close in college, kept in contact following graduation, and currently they mainly communicate via text, as they don't often meet in person because of the distance. This is where it becomes odd for me. Randy texts Julie incessantly, and I truly mean incessantly. I first observed it a couple of weeks after we moved in because Julie's phone would vibrate with messages from him at all times. Early morning texts, late evening conversations, messages during supper while we're viewing films, even occasionally when we're being intimate. Initially, I didn't give it much thought since everyone possesses that one friend who's a frequent texter. However, as time progressed, I began observing patterns that troubled me. Julie would become visibly excited whenever she got texts from Randy, often smiling or even laughing aloud at whatever he'd sent. When I'd casually inquire what was so humorous or what they were discussing, she'd offer vague replies such as, "Oh, just Randy being Randy," or "He's telling me about some drama at his job." The aspect that genuinely began to trouble me was that Julie appeared protective of their discussions in a manner that felt covert. If I were beside her when she received a text from Randy, she'd turn her phone away from me or hold off responding until I departed the room. On a few occasions, I've entered a room while she was speaking with him on the phone, and she'd promptly end the discussion or move to speakerphone and shift the topic to something broader. I attempted to mention meeting Randy informally on several occasions. Given that Julie discusses him quite often and they're supposedly very close friends, I proposed that perhaps we could drive to see him one weekend, or if he ever visits our city, we could all spend time together. Julie consistently avoids these propositions with justifications about calendar clashes, or states things like, "Oh, you likely wouldn't share much in common with him," or "He's experiencing a lot currently and isn't truly keen on meeting new individuals." Roughly 3 weeks ago, I put forward the idea that since Julie speaks of Randy so frequently, and they're clearly close, perhaps I could simply greet him during one of their calls, or we could all engage in a video conversation sometime. Julie became visibly uneasy and mentioned something about Randy being quite private and disliking conversations with individuals he doesn't know intimately. She appeared almost protective regarding it, which I found strange as most of her other companions are quite social and inviting. Their communications regularity has certainly grown during the last month. There are days when I'm certain Julie receives more texts from Randy than from all others put together. Last weekend we were meant to have a quiet date, and Randy telephoned her on 3 distinct occasions. Each call extended for no less than 30 minutes, and Julie accepted every one, retreating to the bedroom or moving onto the balcony to speak in private. I'm beginning to sense that I'm vying with this individual for my girlfriend's focus, which appears absurd since he's allegedly gay and resides 2 hours away. Yet the covert character of their communication and Julie's unwillingness to involve me in any facet of their bond is causing me unease. I've tried to scrutinize my own impulses and determine if my jealousy is irrational, but I continually return to the realization that this interaction feels unlike any of Julie's other friendships. Last Thursday, matters reached a slight climax. We were dining at home, and Randy telephoned. Julie instantly rose to receive the call in the other room, leaving me seated at the table by myself for nearly 45 minutes. When she returned, she appeared agitated and preoccupied, and hardly ate her meal. When I inquired if all was well, she simply stated Randy was managing some issues but refused to elaborate. I eventually conveyed to Julie that I was experiencing unease with the clandestine nature of her friendship with Randy, and that I couldn't grasp why I couldn't encounter someone who was evidently such a vital element of her existence. I attempted to avoid sounding accusatory, and I stressed that I trusted her, but that this circumstance was causing me to feel left out and strange. Julie became defensive, stating I was acting possessive and that she had a right to maintain private friendships. She said that not all parts of her life had to involve me, and that Randy was dealing with private matters that weren't my concern. She also noted that I possess friends she hasn't encountered, which holds true technically, though these are mainly work associates or fellows I sometimes play basketball with, not individuals I speak with daily or engage in lengthy emotional phone discussions with. We didn't precisely quarrel over it, but the discussion concluded with us both feeling annoyed and misunderstood. From that point, Julie has become even more covert regarding her talks with Randy. I'm conflicted because I do have faith in Julie, and I don't wish to be the sort of boyfriend who becomes envious of his girlfriend's companionships. Simultaneously, the clandestine conduct appears to be a warning sign, and I cannot dismiss the sensation that there's an aspect of this friendship Julie prefers I remain unaware of. So, Ida, for being upset about this situation? Comment 1, NTA. Trust your gut feelings here. The covertness is the genuine problem. If this were truly merely a platonic bond, why wouldn't she wish for you to meet him, or at least be transparent about their discussions? My former partner did something comparable, and it turned out the friend wasn't as platonic as asserted. OP reply, you're right. The secrecy is what disturbs me most. All her other friendships are quite open. Comment 2. YTA, you're behaving in a controlling and jealous manner. She's entitled to private friendships and doesn't owe you access to every discussion. You stated yourself that you trust her, so act accordingly. OP reply, I understand your point, and I absolutely do not wish to be controlling. But is it truly unreasonable to desire to meet someone my girlfriend communicates with every single day? I'm not requesting to read their messages, merely questioning why meeting him is forbidden. Comment 3. How frequently does she actually speak with her other friends? Is Randy genuinely receiving disproportionate attention compared to everyone else? OP reply, she likely texts her closest female friend perhaps a few times weekly, and meets her college roommate group maybe twice a month. Randy unquestionably receives significantly more communication than anyone else, including me on some days. Truthfully. Update. Well, that intensified rapidly. I posted here approximately 6 weeks ago, inquiring if I was being unreasonable regarding my girlfriend Julie's secretive friendship with her gay best friend Randy. The predominant agreement was that the secrecy was troubling, and several individuals advised, trusting my instincts, that something felt amiss. I followed that counsel and opted to have another discussion with Julie, but this time I was more direct about my worries. I waited for an opportune time when we were both at ease and undisturbed, and I informed her that we needed to have a candid discussion concerning Randy, as the circumstance was impacting my sense of ease in our relationship. I clarified that I understood she deserved her own private friendships, but the extent of the secrecy and her unwillingness to let me meet someone who was clearly significant to her felt like she was holding something back. I mentioned that I was beginning to feel like she was concealing something, and if there truly was nothing to hide, I couldn't grasp why meeting Randy or being more open about their friendship was so important. Julie at first became defensive once more and reiterated her earlier points about privacy and my being controlling. But I remained calm and informed her that this wasn't about control. It was about openness in our relationship. I stated that if the roles were reversed, and I had a close friend I spoke with continually, but wouldn't let her meet or learn anything about our discussions, she would likely find that odd as well. After roughly an hour of discussion, Julie eventually broke down and confessed that she hadn't been entirely truthful with me about Randy. She revealed that Randy isn't actually gay, and that they didn't simply meet in college as friends. He's her ex-boyfriend from her junior and senior years. They were together for roughly a year and a half before ending things when he graduated, a semester earlier than her, and relocated for work. I was understandably shocked and quite hurt that she had deceived me about something so significant. I asked her why she needed to lie, and she said she was concerned that if I knew Randy was her former boyfriend, I wouldn't be at ease with their ongoing friendship. She said that yes, they had dated, but that they had truly become just friends after the breakup, and that their present connection was strictly platonic. Julie maintained that she had informed me Randy was gay because she believed that would make me feel more confident about their friendship, and she didn't want me to feel envious or request that she cease communicating with him. She said that she prizes Randy as a friend and didn't want to forfeit that bond, but she also wished to avoid it creating issues between us. I told Julie that I grasped why she might have been concerned about my reaction, but that lying about it was far worse than simply being upfront from the start. I said that now I felt like I couldn't rely on her to be direct with me about important things, and that the lie had actually created precisely the issue she was attempting to prevent. Julie apologized and said she understood. The lie was an error, but she continued to stress that nothing improper was occurring between her and Randy. She said that they truly are only friends now, that they discuss work-related matters, shared acquaintances, and overall life developments. She offered to let me see some of their latest text exchanges to demonstrate that nothing romantic or improper was taking place. I was still absorbing the fact that she had deceived me for months, so I informed her I required some time to reflect on everything. The deception bothered me more than the fact that Randy was her former partner, truthfully. I comprehend that individuals can be friends with their ex-partners, and I don't believe that's inherently improper. However, the dishonesty caused me to wonder what else she might be withholding from me. During the subsequent few days, Julie was evidently attempting to rectify the situation. She was more observant, less private about her phone, and mentioned the Randy matter a few more times to reaffirm that she regretted lying and that their friendship genuinely was platonic. She also stated she would be agreeable to introducing me to Randy, either face-to-face or via video call, if that would assist me in feeling more at ease. After pondering it for approximately a week, I concluded that I could overlook the deception, but that I required Julie to be entirely truthful with me moving ahead. I informed her that I valued her readiness to introduce me to Randy, and that I believed that would help me feel more positive about the circumstances. I also stated that I required her to grasp why the deception presented such an issue for me, and that restoring my trust would necessitate some time. Julie appeared relieved that I was prepared to resolve it, and she pledged to be more open about everything. She mentioned she would arrange a time for me to meet Randy, likely through video chat initially, since he resides 2 hours away. However, it's been roughly 3 weeks since that discussion, and the promised introduction to Randy still hasn't occurred. Each time I mention it, Julie offers an excuse. Randy is occupied with work, he's handling family matters, he's unwell, and so on. The regularity of their communication hasn't truly lessened either. If anything, it appears they're conversing even more than previously, though Julie is less secretive regarding it now. I'm beginning to question if there's more to this circumstance than Julie is acknowledging. The continuous communication still troubles me, particularly now that I'm aware Randy is her former partner, and the fact that she continues to invent excuses as to why I cannot meet him is rekindling all my initial worries about secrecy. I'm attempting to be patient and afford Julie the benefit of the doubt, but I'm also beginning to feel as though perhaps the deception was merely the tip of the iceberg. I'm uncertain if I should press harder for the introduction to Randy, or if I should simply trust that Julie is being truthful with me now and dismiss it. Has anyone else encountered a circumstance like this? How long would you anticipate your partner to fulfill their promise of introducing you to an ex they remain friends with? Am I being irrational to still feel uneasy about this? Update 2, good heavens, this circumstance just continues to deteriorate. I truly don't know if I'm losing my sanity or if I'm involved with the most untruthful individual on earth. This will be lengthy because there's much to explain. A brief summary for those just catching up on this situation. I began seeing Julie 8 months ago, and we cohabited 5 months ago. I discovered she was being guarded concerning her gay best friend, Randy, who was revealed as her ex-boyfriend. She deceived about his sexuality because she was concerned I'd be uneasy with their ongoing companionship. I chose to address the lying issue, but she continually offered pretexts as to why I was unable to meet Randy. Well, last week, I discovered why she's been so hesitant to introduce us, and it's far more dire than I imagined. This revelation occurred entirely by chance. Julie and I divide some domestic costs, and we've been apportioning rent, services, and food approximately equally since our cohabitation began. Last Tuesday, I was searching for our internet statement because I intended to arrange automatic payments, and I inquired of Julie if she knew its location. She instructed me to examine the folder where we store all our statements and crucial papers. As I was sifting through the folder, I inadvertently overturned a pile of documents, and when I was gathering them, I noticed multiple bank deposit forms that had slipped from an envelope. I wasn't deliberately prying, but I couldn't fail to observe that the deposit slips indicated regular monthly deposits of $800 from XYZ LLC, making it anonymous to avoid getting sued. I was perplexed because I know what Julie earns from her employment, and $800 monthly deposits didn't align with her salary or any other known source of income. Julie works part-time and earns approximately $2,200 each month, and I knew she was sometimes financially constrained, which is partially why we chose to divide costs. I likely ought to have simply inquired of Julie directly, but considering all that had occurred with the Randy situation, I had this sense of dread. So I undertook an action I'm not proud of. I researched it online. As it happened, XYZ LLC is a small consulting company owned by a certain Randy, the same Randy who is Julie's ex-boyfriend and ostensibly just a friend. When Julie returned from work that evening, I presented her with the deposit slips and requested an explanation for what XYZ LLC was. The look on her face instantly conveyed all I needed to understand. She turned utterly pale and began to stutter about how she could account for it. I inquired directly if Randy had been transferring funds to her, and after a long pause, she confessed that indeed he had been assisting her with costs for the past several months. She said that when we moved in together, She was concerned about covering her portion of the rent and bills, so she had expressed her financial worries to Randy during one of their conversations. According to Julie, Randy proposed to assist her for a period until she could achieve greater financial stability. She stated he was doing well with his consulting company and wished to assist a friend who was having difficulties. She maintained that it was solely a loan and that she intended to repay him once she secured a suitable full-time position or found a better-paying job. I asked Julie why she hadn't told me about this situation, especially since we had specifically discussed our finances before moving in together. I had asked her repeatedly if she was comfortable with the 50-50 split, and she had assured me that she could manage her share. She mentioned she felt embarrassed about needing financial assistance and didn't want me to think she couldn't support herself. But here's the part that truly bothered me. I asked Julie how long this had been happening, and she admitted that Randy had been sending her money since before we even moved in together. She explained he started helping her with rent at her old apartment when she was struggling financially, and then continued helping when we moved in together. This implies that for months, Julie has been telling me she was paying her half of our shared expenses with her own money, when in reality, her ex-boyfriend has been subsidizing our relationship. I felt like such a fool. There I was, thinking we were building something together as equal partners, when in fact, Randy has been financially supporting my girlfriend this entire time. I asked Julie if Randy knew that she was residing with me, and that his money was essentially paying for part of our shared living expenses. She became evasive and stated that Randy knew she had a boyfriend, but that the specifics of their living arrangement and finances weren't truly his concern. That reply made me even more suspicious, so I pressed harder. I inquired if Randy was aware that his friend was using his money to cover rent for an apartment she shared with her boyfriend. Julie finally confessed that no, Randy didn't know the complete specifics of our living situation. I was stunned. So not only had Julie been deceiving me about the source of her money, but she had also been misleading Randy about what his funds were being utilized for. I questioned her about how she imagined Randy would feel if he knew he was essentially subsidizing his ex-girlfriend's relationship with another man. Julie began weeping and mentioned that the situation had grown intricate, but that she had never meant for things to get so tangled. She explained that initially Randy's assistance was only meant to be temporary, but that she had grown reliant on it and didn't know how to move away from it without causing financial strain. I questioned her what she believed Randy was gaining from this arrangement, because $800 a month is not a trivial sum of money to simply provide to a friend with no conditions. Julie mentioned that Randy was successful and that the money wasn't a major issue for him, and that he was simply being a good friend. But that didn't seem logical to me. Why would someone forward their ex-girlfriend $800 each month merely out of friendship? And why would Julie be so clandestine about their communication if it was truly just amicable conversations about work and mutual friends? I told Julie that I needed some time to absorb all of this, because it felt like every conversation we had about Randy uncovered another layer of deceit. She pleaded with me not to make any hasty choices and vowed that she would begin being entirely truthful about everything. I've been residing at my friend's home for the past few days, while I try to decide what steps to take. I feel as though I don't even recognize Julie anymore. The lying about Randy being gay, the lying about where her money comes from, the covertness surrounding their relationship. It's all making me doubt every aspect of our relationship. I'm also coming to understand that if Julie ends things with me, she'll likely need to vacate our apartment, since she cannot truly cover her portion of the expenses without Randy's assistance, which makes me wonder if part of the reason she's been so dedicated to maintaining both relationships is because she requires Randy's financial backing, but also desires the emotional bond with me. I'm unsure how to proceed. I feel like I'm living in some kind of perverted love triangle where I'm the sole individual unaware of what's truly happening. Update 3. I find it hard to believe I'm revisiting this again, but this circumstance has totally erupted, and I genuinely don't know who else to discuss this with. My friends are likely tired of hearing about Julie and Randy, and I feel like I'm caught in the most dreadful soap opera imaginable. Following my last update about finding out about the monthly payments from Randy, I spent around a week staying at my friend's apartment, trying to decide what to do. I was inclined to break up with Julie because the extent of the dishonesty was simply too much, but a part of me still cared for her and wished to believe that perhaps we could overcome it if she would just begin being fully truthful. I chose to give her one more opportunity, but I informed her that I required full transparency concerning everything about Randy from that point on. No more falsehoods, no more partial truths, no more shielding my feelings with trickery. I stated that if I discovered she was still concealing anything, I would be finished. Julie appeared truly relieved that I was prepared to try once more, and she pledged that she would disclose everything to me and that there would be no further secrets. She mentioned she understood how much harm the dishonesty had caused, and that she aimed to restore my trust. For roughly a week, things appeared improved. Julie was more candid about when Randy messaged or phoned, and she even displayed a few of their discussions to me. They appeared quite ordinary, work-related matters, grievances about their individual jobs, some recollections about university friends. Nothing overtly romantic or unsuitable. However, then last Friday, everything went terribly wrong once more. Julie had left her laptop open on the kitchen table while she was showering, and a Facebook message notification appeared on the screen. I wasn't attempting to read her messages, but the preview text was visible, and it was from Randy. What I saw sent a chill down my spine. The message preview read, "Can't wait to see you next weekend. It's been too long since we've been together properly. I've been thinking about..." The remainder was cut off, but I had seen enough. Julie had never mentioned anything about seeing Randy next weekend, and the phrase, "been together properly," certainly didn't sound like something you'd say to a platonic friend. When Julie emerged from the shower, I confronted her about the message. I told her what I had seen and asked her to explain what Randy meant about seeing her next weekend and being together properly. Julie's face turned pale, and she began to stammer once more. She claimed that Randy had been asking to visit for weeks, and that she had tentatively agreed to meet up with him, but that she hadn't mentioned it to me because she wasn't sure if it was going to happen. I requested that she show me the complete conversation, and after a great deal of hesitation, she opened her laptop and brought up the Facebook messages. What I read made me feel nauseous. The conversation wasn't solely about Randy visiting. It was evident from the context that Randy believed he and Julie were reconciling. He was discussing how much he missed her, how he'd been thinking about them a lot recently, and how he was eager to finally be in the same city so they could sort things out. What was even worse, Julie's replies weren't dismissing this interpretation. She was being playful and supportive, telling him she missed him as well and that she was eager to see how things developed. But the very worst part was a message from Randy that stated, "I know you're still seeing the guy casually, but we both know what we have is special. I'm ready to make this work for real this time." And Julie's reply, "I know. It's complicated right now, but I think about us all the time. We just need to figure out the logistics." I demanded Julie explain what on earth I was reading, and she began weeping, claiming the messages weren't what they seemed. She stated that Randy had been pushing her to reconcile, and that she had been attempting to gently discourage him, without forfeiting his friendship or his monetary aid. I directly asked her if she desired to reconcile, and that she had been trying to gently dissuade him without losing his friendship or his financial aid. I then explicitly asked her if she wanted to reunite with Randy, and she replied, no, but that she didn't know how to inform him without jeopardizing everything. She mentioned she was concerned that if she was too explicit in refusing him, he would cease assisting her financially and she wouldn't be able to cover her costs. Thus, essentially, Julie confessed that she had been leading Randy on, allowing him to think they might reunite, so that he would keep sending her funds. And she had been lying to me about the real nature of their relationship, trying to keep me from discovering the financial arrangement and the emotional manipulation she was carrying out. My anger was so intense I could hardly talk. I told Julie she had been lying to us both, manipulating Randy for money, and lying to me about where we stood. I said that what she was doing to Randy was terrible, no matter how I felt about their previous relationship, and that her actions toward me were even worse. Julie kept crying and saying she never intended for things to get so complicated, and that she loved me and wanted to be with me, not Randy. But when I asked if she was ready to immediately tell Randy the truth about our relationship and stop taking his money, she paused. That hesitation told me everything I needed to know. Julie wasn't ready to let go of Randy's financial backing, even if it meant keeping up the lies to both of us. I told Julie I was finished, and that I couldn't stay with someone who was capable of this much manipulation. I said she needed to figure out her situation with Randy, but that I wasn't going to get involved in whatever twisted game she was playing. I packed my things and went back to a friend's place. Julie has been texting and calling nonstop, pleading with me to return and talk things through. She's saying she'll tell Randy everything and stop taking his money, but I no longer trust her. The truth is, I also feel sorry for Randy. He's being exploited by someone he obviously still cares for, and he has no idea that the woman he's supporting, financially and emotionally, is living with another guy and describing their relationship as casual dating. I'm thinking about reaching out to Randy and letting him know what's been happening. Part of me believes he deserves to know the truth, but another part feels it's not my role to get involved in their issues. What would you do? Final update. Well, this entire nightmare finally reached a dramatic end, and honestly, I couldn't have written it better myself. For those who haven't been keeping up, the brief version is that my now ex-girlfriend Julie had been lying to me about her gay best friend Randy, who turned out to be her ex-boyfriend, sending her $800 monthly, believing they were rekindling their relationship. After my last update, I was staying at my friend's place, trying to decide whether to contact Randy directly to tell him what was truly going on. I was leaning towards simply stepping away from the whole situation and letting them sort out their mess without me. But it seems the universe had different intentions. Last Saturday afternoon, I returned to the apartment to collect more of my belongings while Julie was at work. I thought it would be simpler to avoid another tearful confrontation where she pleaded for me to give her another shot. I had been delaying collecting my belongings because, honestly, I was still processing everything and wasn't prepared for the finality of actually moving out. I was in the bedroom packing my clothes when I heard someone knocking at the front door. I assumed it was probably Julie returning home early, or perhaps one of her friends checking on her, so I ignored it. But the knocking persisted, and then I heard a man's voice calling, "Julie, are you home? I wanted to surprise you." My stomach sank because I immediately realized it had to be Randy. Julie had never mentioned anything about him planning a visit, but given all I'd learned about her deceit, that wasn't exactly a shock. I was in a truly uncomfortable spot. I could either hide in the bedroom and hope he'd leave, or I could answer the door and finally meet the guy who had unknowingly been financing my relationship for months. I decided I was too curious to hide, and truthfully, I felt Randy deserved to know what was really happening. I opened the door, and there stood this tall, well-dressed man, holding a huge bouquet of flowers and a bottle of wine. He looked puzzled when he saw me and asked if Julie was home. I told him she was at work, and then I introduced myself as her boyfriend. The expression on Randy's face was utterly heartbreaking. He shifted from confused to shocked to wounded in about 3 seconds. He asked if I was certain I had the correct apartment, because Julie had told him she was only casually seeing someone, and that it wasn't serious. I invited Randy inside because I believed we both deserved to have an honest discussion about what Julie had been doing to us both. I made coffee, and we spent about 2 hours discussing the relationship with Julie. It was bizarre. Randy told me that Julie had been telling him for months that she missed their relationship and was considering moving to his city to be closer to him. She had been complaining to him about her financial difficulties and her casual dating life, making it seem like she was unhappy and seeking a reason to leave. Meanwhile, she had been telling me that Randy was merely a friend who was temporarily assisting her, and that she was committed to our relationship and excited about our future together. Randy was stunned to learn that we had been living together for months, and that his monthly payments had essentially been covering our shared expenses. He said Julie had made it sound like she was barely getting by in a studio apartment and struggling financially on her own. I felt awful for the guy. He clearly still had genuine feelings for Julie, and he had been sincerely trying to help someone he cared about get back on her feet. He had no idea that he was being manipulated for money while Julie played house with someone else. Randy also informed me that Julie had been planning to break up with me this weekend when he visited, and that they were going to spend the weekend reconnecting and discussing her relocation to a city. She had apparently been telling him that she just needed to figure out how to end things with me in a way that wouldn't cause me pain. When Julie arrived home from work and discovered Randy and me sitting together in the living room, she looked as if she was about to faint. She immediately began trying to mitigate the damage, telling Randy she could explain everything and that things weren't what they seemed. But Randy and I had already uncovered most of her deceptions, and neither of us was interested in hearing more manipulative justifications. Randy told Julie that he felt exploited and betrayed, and that he was through with whatever scheme she had been running. He said he wanted her to repay the money he had sent her, though I think we both knew that was improbable. I told Julie that I had already decided to end our relationship, and that learning about her plans to break up with me this weekend only confirmed I was making the correct choice. Julie attempted to convince both of us that she genuinely cared about us, and that she had simply become overwhelmed by the situation and made poor decisions. She said she had been planning to be honest about everything and choose between us, but that she hadn't known how to manage it. Randy and I both told her that the moment for honesty had passed, and that we weren't interested in being options for her to pick from. The fact that she had been actively deceiving both of us while making plans behind our backs demonstrated that she wasn't capable of the kind of honest relationship either of us desired. Randy left after making it clear that he wanted no further communication with Julie. I finished packing my belongings and told Julie that I would return with friends later that week to collect my furniture and other possessions. I also informed her that she had until the end of the month to figure out how she would afford the apartment on her own, because I was removing my name from the lease. It's been a week since all this happened, and I feel like I've been through an emotional blender. I'm angry about the months of lies and manipulation, but I'm also honestly relieved that the truth finally emerged, and I don't have to keep wondering what Julie was concealing. I keep thinking about how many times I doubted my own instincts and questioned if I was being paranoid or controlling. It turns out every red flag I noticed was indicating something real, and I should have trusted my gut much sooner. Julie has been attempting to contact me through mutual friends, but I have asked them not to relay her messages. I'm done with her explanations and apologies. The extent of deception and manipulation she maintained for months tells me everything I need to know about her character. I feel bad for Randy, and I hope he learned something from this experience about not getting re-involved with exes who reach out when they need something. But I'm mostly just grateful that I learned who Julie really was before I wasted any more time or emotional energy on her. Thanks to everyone who commented on my earlier posts. A lot of you told me to trust my instincts and that the secrecy was a major red flag, and you were absolutely right. I just wish I had listened sooner.